What if the most ordinary man in a quiet coastal town was never meant to stay ordinary? What if a missing alien engineer, a stolen piece of forbidden technology, and a single act of kindness pulled him into a war no one on Earth even knows exists? And what if the line between fate and coincidence was nothing more than the moment he decided not to look away? Tonight, everything changes for him, and for us. Morning came to Greywater Cove with the same gray light that had given the town its name. Evan Rook unlocked the glass door of his barber shop, pushed it open with his shoulder, and breathed in the familiar blend of disinfectant, old wood, and coastal air. Out on the street, delivery trucks groaned past. A gull complained somewhere above the faded awnings. He flipped on the lights. The mirrors along the wall blinked awake, catching the narrow room from every angle. 3 chairs, 2 stations, 1 small waiting bench that creaked every time someone sat down, no matter their weight. For 10 years, this had been his universe. Evan hung his jacket behind the counter, rolled up the sleeves of his black workshirt, and checked the day's appointments on the old tablet by the register. Half full, enough to pay rent and keep the lights on, not enough to feel like progress. He snorted softly at that thought. Progress, he muttered, straightening a row of combs. Sure, 1 fade at a time. The television mounted in the corner came on with a soft electronic chime. A morning news host smiled too brightly at the camera. Evan let it play in the background while he wiped down the first chair. Fingers moving by habit. A headline bar slid across the bottom of the screen. Unusual orbital signals detected. Officials downplay incident. He glanced up. The camera cut to a shaky video of a night sky over the ocean. A small, sharp point of light streaking and then stuttering, like it had hit something invisible. The anchor's voice dropped half an octave, the way they did when they wanted people to lean in. Amateur astronomers across 3 coastal states reported the same anomaly last night. She said, a brief spike in radio noise accompanied a visible flare. Space agencies have not issued any formal statement. But the feed cut. A commercial for laundry detergent took over. Loud and cheerful and aggressively normal. Evan stared at the screen for a second longer. Right, he said, guess we're done worrying about space. He reached for the remote, lowered the volume, and checked the clock above the door. 8:42. First appointment at 9. Plenty of time. He moved to the center of the room, planted his bare feet on the cool floor, and lifted his hands into a guard position. The mirrors threw his pose back at him from 3 directions. A lean man in his early 30s. Dark hair pulled back, stubble just this side of respectable. He began to move through a familiar kata. Slow at first, then sharper. Forearm block, step, elbow, pivot. He felt his weight shift. The muscles along his back warming. The air cutting around his hands. Every strike stopped exactly where it should. Inches from the mirror. He had never made it past local tournaments. Never joined the service. Never done anything with the training except keep his body from forgetting. But it made the mornings feel less empty. The bell above the door chimed. Evan dropped his hands, smoothed his shirt, and turned with a practiced smile. Morning, he said, you're early, but that just makes you my favorite person today. The man in the doorway laughed and stepped inside, shaking the drizzle from his coat. A regular. Small talk came easy. The chair hissed as it lowered. Scissors whispered. Hair fell. Time moved. By late morning, the shop felt warm and lived in. Voices had layered over each other. A boy had gotten his first proper cut, clinging to his mother's hand. An older man had talked about the price of fuel like it was a personal insult. Greywater Cove was like that. It complained, but it stayed. As the clock crawled past 11:30, the shop fell quiet again. Mina Solberg, his part-time assistant, arrived with a coffee in one hand and a box of pastries in the other. Her blonde hair jammed into a messy knot. You look like you fought the morning and lost, Evan said. Mina handed him a cup. I fought the bus schedule, she said. The bus schedule cheated. He took a grateful sip. The coffee was too sweet. But it was hot. Outside, the light shifted as the day edged toward noon. Inside, the barbershop waited for whoever would walk through the door next. The door chime rang again just after 12. The woman who stepped inside made Evan's brain skip. Not because she was strange, but because everything about her was almost perfectly ordinary, except for the way all the ordinary details lined up too neatly. She wore dark jeans, a light jacket, and a slate-colored scarf, like any traveler who had underestimated the chill of a coastal town. Her hair was a deep brown, straight and smooth, pulled back from a face that would have looked at home in any city on any travel advertisement. But her posture was too still. Her gaze swept the room in a single, efficient motion, taking in the chairs, the exits, the windows, and finally, him. "Hi," Evan said, setting his coffee aside. "Welcome to Rook's. You looking for a trim? Or just directions to somewhere more exciting?" Her mouth twitched at the corner, as if she recognized the line for what it was, a reflex. "A trim," she said. Her voice carried a faint accent he couldn't place. "And, I need to ask you something. If you have time." "We sell time by the half-inch," he said, "but I can throw in a question for free." Mina shot him a look behind the woman's back that said behave. Evan pretended not to see it. He gestured to the chair. The woman sat with controlled ease, like someone who had spent years learning how not to look dangerous even when she was. As he draped the cape around her shoulders, his fingers brushed the side of her neck. Her skin was warm, but cooler than he expected. The pulse under his fingertips was steady. Too steady. No hesitation. No flutter. Just a precise rhythm. He stepped back. "What are we doing today?" he asked. "Shape, length, existential crisis?" "Just a small change," she said. "Something to make me look less like I did 3 days ago." Evan paused with the comb halfway to her hair. "Bad breakup?" he asked. She shook her head. "Bad pattern recognition," she said quietly. "Not yours. Theirs." He didn't know what that meant, so he let the silence rest while he began to work. The hum of clippers filled the space. Hair slid onto the floor in soft arcs. After a minute, she spoke again. "Your assistant," she said, eyes meeting Mina in the mirror. "You've worked here long?" Mina straightened a stack of magazines that did not need straightening. "Couple of years," she said. "Why?" The woman's gaze sharpened. "Do you remember every face that sits in that chair?" she asked. Mina snorted. "Not unless they tip badly." "I'm looking for someone," the woman said. "My sister." Evan's hand slowed. The woman continued, choosing her words carefully. "She's about my height," she said. "Slim shoulders, dark hair. When she's nervous, she touches this part of her wrist." She tapped a spot just above the inside of her left wrist with 2 fingers. Her movements were clean, almost rehearsed. "There's a small mark here," she added, "like a faint band under the skin. Not a tattoo, more like a shadow of metal. It shows if the light hits at the right angle." Mina frowned, thinking. "There's more," the woman said. "Her eyes look different when she's tired. The color shifts, just a little. People notice without realizing why. You'd remember that." Evan looked at her in the mirror. "That's a lot of detail," he said. "You a detective, or just a very specific sister?" "I'm just Astra," she said. "Astra Vera." She held his gaze without flinching. "And my sister's name is Nira," she added. "She was here, in this town. I know that much." The name landed between them like a small stone dropped into still water. Mina chewed her lip, eyes narrowing as she replayed the last few days in her head. 3 or 4 days ago, Astra said. Late afternoon, maybe. She would have come in alone. Mina's eyes widened. "Wait," she said. "There was a girl. Quiet. Looked kind of like you." She kept glancing at the window like she expected someone to be there. Astra's hands tightened on the armrests. "What did she ask for?" Astra said. "Just a trim," Mina said. "Didn't say much. Paid cash. She did touch her wrist. Right here." Mina mirrored the gesture, tapping the same spot Astra had indicated. Evan felt a small chill climb the back of his neck. "Did she seem scared?" Astra asked. Mina shook her head slowly. "More like tired," she said, like she'd been traveling forever and wasn't sure if she should stop. Astra breathed out, a sound that trembled at the edges before she forced it steady again. "Thank you," she said. "That helps more than you know." Evan met her eyes in the mirror again. "You from around here, Astra?" he asked. "Not exactly," she said. "Family in Greywater?" he tried. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Greywater is just a place on a map," she said. "Nira should have moved on by now. But she hasn't checked in. That means something went wrong." Evan wanted to ask what she meant by checked in, but the set of her shoulders told him he was already close to the edge of what she was willing to say. He finished the cut in careful silence, shaping her hair just enough to change the outline of her face without erasing its character. When he was done, he lifted the cape away. Astra stood, studied herself in the mirror, and nodded once. "How much?" she asked. He told her. She paid in exact bills. Fingers steady, eyes distant. "If she comes back," Astra said, pausing at the door, "if you see anyone who fits that description, please remember my name." "Astra Vera," he said. "I'm not likely to forget." She seemed to weigh that for a second, then pushed the door open and stepped out into the street. The chime rang behind her, soft and final. From the chair by the window, Evan watched Astra walk down the sidewalk until she vanished into the midday crowd. Mina leaned on the counter beside him. "You're staring," she said. "I'm observing," he replied. "It's different, more scientific." Mina lifted a brow. "And what did your advanced observational skills tell you?" "That she's not from around here," Evan said, "and that she's either in trouble, or she brings trouble with her. Or both," Mina said. He thought of the way Astra's pulse had felt under his fingers. That perfectly even rhythm, the way she'd catalogued the shop in a single glance, the way her eyes had held his. Too calm for someone worried about family. He had seen people hide fear before. You didn't spend years cutting hair without learning how people wore their panic. They hunched, they fidgeted, they scratched at invisible itches on their arms. Astra had done none of that. If she was afraid, it was buried under something much colder. Outside, traffic slid past. A van with darkened windows rolled slowly by the storefront, pausing just a fraction too long before continuing. He frowned. "Did you see that?" he asked. "See what?" Mina said, already checking messages on her phone. "Nothing," he said, "probably nothing." The afternoon moved on. Customers came and went. Evan buried himself in the familiar rhythm: greet, seat, cut, talk, sweep. The questions about Astra and Nira sank into the background, but they didn't disappear. By the time they closed, the sky over Greywater Cove had deepened from dull gray to a darker, heavier shade. Streetlights flickered on one by one, casting small islands of yellow onto the damp pavement. Mina pulled on her jacket. "You want me to lock up?" she asked. "I've got it," Evan said. "Go catch the cheating bus." She smirked, waved, and left. He finished wiping down the last chair, hung the broom in its corner, and turned off most of the lights, leaving only the front strip glowing. The shop looked smaller that way, like a stage set after the audience had gone home. He stood for a second, listening to the quiet. Then his stomach growled. "Right," he said, "dinner." He locked the door, checked it twice, and walked toward the corner diner that stayed open late enough to feel like a secret. It was close to midnight when he headed back. Greywater Cove at that hour felt like a different town. The daytime noises, delivery trucks, chatter, the endless complaining of gulls, faded. In their place came the softer sounds, the distant thump of music from a bar, the hum of a refrigeration unit behind a closed store, the quiet rush of waves slapping the seawall. The air smelled of salt and damp concrete. Evan cut through a narrow side street, taking the route he always took when he didn't feel like walking under the brighter lights of the main road. The alley ran between the backs of 2 blocks of buildings, cluttered with recycling bins and the ghost of old graffiti. He was halfway down when he heard it. A dull thud, then another, the scrape of shoes on wet asphalt. He slowed. Another sound followed, the crackle of something electrical and the short, sharp inhale of someone trying not to cry out. Evan moved forward until he could see where the alley opened into a wider loading bay behind a shuttered electronics store. 6 figures clustered there. 4 wore dark jackets with rigid shoulders and matching helmets, their faces hidden behind tinted visors. The other 2 had shed their helmets, revealing hard, flat expressions and short, efficient haircuts. All of them carried compact weapons that hummed with a faint, unpleasant sound. In the center of the ring they formed, Someone moved. Astra. Her jacket was torn at one sleeve. Her scarf hung loose around her neck. She moved with controlled precision, turning a sidestep into a strike, using the narrow space to keep them from surrounding her fully. One attacker lunged. She caught his wrist, twisted, and drove her elbow into the joint just enough to make his hand spasm and drop the weapon. She kicked it away, only to have another figure sweep at her legs with a collapsible baton. She jumped, barely clearing it, landed, and pivoted into a sharp hook that cracked against a helmet. The sound echoed off the brick. Evan's hands clenched at his sides. This was not random. One of the unhelmeted men lifted a device from his belt. It looked like a thick metal clasp attached to a cable that snaked back to a pack on his back. "Now," he said. The nearest attacker fainted low. Another came in high. Astra blocked both, but it cost her position. The man with the device stepped in close, faster than his bulk suggested. He slammed the clasp against the side of her neck. White light flared over her skin in a thin rain. Astra stiffened, her muscles locked, her eyes went wide, then unfocused. The man held the clasp there for a heartbeat, then released it. The ring of light remained, pulsing softly against her throat. "Neurolock engaged," he said. "Subject is stable." Astra's legs buckled. Two of the armored figures caught her before she hit the ground. Evan realized he was already moving. He ducked back behind the corner of the wall and dragged his phone from his pocket. Fingers suddenly clumsy. He dialed emergency services. 911, "What's your emergency?" "There's an assault," he said, forcing his voice steady. 6 men, armed, in the alley behind Marlowe's Electronics. Just off 5th. They've got some kind of weapon. They're taking someone. "Are you in immediate danger?" the operator asked. "Not yet," he said, "but she is." "Units are being dispatched," the voice said. "Stay where you are if you can. Do not approach the suspects." He ended the call before she could say more. In the loading bay, the attackers had hoisted Astra between them, her feet dragging, her head lolling slightly. The ring of light around her neck glowed with each shallow breath. A van rolled forward from the shadows at the far end of the bay. Its engine whisper quiet, paint so dark it swallowed the light from the street lamp overhead. On its side, for just a second, Evan saw a logo, a clean, geometric shape, a triangle intersected by a single vertical line. The image snapped into his memory and stayed there. The back doors of the van swung open. A voice in his head, calm, reasonable, the same one that had kept him behind the barbershop counter for 10 steady years, told him to walk away. He had called the police. He had done his part. This wasn't his fight. But another part of him, the part that woke up during those morning katas, the part that never quite forgave him for not doing more with what he knew his body could do, spoke louder. He watched them lift Astra into the van. He saw her eyes flicker open for a second, unfocused but aware enough to register movement at the edge of her vision. Her gaze brushed across the alley, across the shadows where he stood. It was impossible to know whether she saw him or not. It still felt like a question. He looked down the alley toward the main street. He could already hear the far-off wail of sirens beginning to rise. He looked back at the van. His hand closed around the key to his old motorcycle, still in his jacket pocket from the ride back from the diner. Evan Rook took one breath, deep enough to hurt. "Okay," he whispered. "Fine." The van's doors slammed shut. As it began to roll, he slipped back into the darkness, cut across to the narrow side exit, and jogged toward the small lot where his bike waited. By the time the van turned onto the main road, its taillights glowing faintly red through the mist, Evan was already swinging a leg over the scratched, loyal machine that had carried him through a decade of small errands and almost adventures. The engine coughed, then caught. He tightened his grip on the handlebars. He thought of the quiet shop, of Mina, of the years of safe, predictable days. Then he thought of Astra, held upright between strangers, a ring of cold light digging into her skin. The sirens grew louder, somewhere behind him. Evan twisted the throttle. The bike surged forward, out of the lot and into the night, chasing the van into a future he could no longer pretend he didn't want. The van's taillights were two small red smears ahead of him, cutting through the mist. Evan leaned forward over the handlebars. The engine of his old motorcycle straining as he pushed it harder than he ever had. Wind clawed at his jacket. The cold bit through the denim at his knees. The van took a corner at speed. Its suspension barely dipped. He watched the way the brake lights flashed. Short, sharp taps. Whoever was driving knew the streets. So did he. Greywater Cove was a maze of narrow roads and half-forgotten alleys. He had spent 10 years learning shortcuts to beat traffic, to get home faster, to avoid tourists. Now all of that useless knowledge had teeth. The van passed under a flickering street lamp. For a heartbeat, the side panel caught the light. There it was again, the logo he had seen behind the electronics store. A triangle intersected by a single vertical line. Clean, precise, no text, no explanation. Evan's jaw tightened. He dropped a gear and followed. At the next intersection, a second vehicle slid out from a side street. A dark sedan, no lights, moving like it had been waiting. It pulled in behind the van, then drifted slightly to the side, blocking Evan's line. He swore under his breath and eased the bike to the left, trying to see past. The sedan mirrored him. They know I'm here. He eased back for 3 seconds, letting the distance stretch. Then he remembered the way the sedan had moved into place. Not surprised, expecting. They had seen him at the loading bay. Maybe on some camera he had missed. Maybe just in the reflection of a visor. Either way, they had counted him as part of the equation. He refused to be subtracted that easily. Up ahead, the road curved toward the old waterfront. On the right, a narrow service lane split off between 2 brick buildings, barely wide enough for a car. Evan had taken it 100 times to dodge traffic. The sedan hugged the center of the road, guarding the straight line. He chose the crooked one. At the last second, he flicked the bike toward the service lane, leaned hard, and slid between the buildings. The tires skimmed over wet concrete. The walls crowded in, close enough that his knees felt the air move. The lane spat him out 1 block later, right onto the next street. The van was ahead of him again. The sedan was still back on the main road. He let himself breathe. Night in Greywater Cove slipped by in broken pieces. Street, corner, alley, short stretch of highway. The van moved like it had a destination already loaded into a navigation system. No hesitation, no wrong turns. Evan tracked it at a distance he hoped was far enough to avoid notice and close enough to matter. 10 minutes slid past in that rhythm. His hands began to ache on the grips. His eyes burned from staring, unblinking, through the faint smear of rain on his visor. The engine's vibration crawled up through his legs and into his spine. The town thinned. Buildings gave way to warehouses. Streetlights spread farther apart. The smell of the ocean grew stronger. The van turned off the main road, passing a rusted sign that read Industrial Zone North in letters half-eaten by salt. Evan killed his headlight and let the bike roll into the shadows. Up ahead, the van slowed. Its brake lights flared once, twice, then went dark as it turned behind a wall of stacked shipping containers and disappeared. He coasted to the mouth of the side road and stopped where the darkness was thickest. Beyond the containers was a cluster of low warehouses and empty lots. The kind of place where businesses went to die quietly. The only light came from a few high-mounted lamps on tall poles, casting cold circles onto the cracked asphalt. He killed the engine and sat for a moment, listening. No voices reached him, just the distant hiss of the ocean and the light hum of electricity from the lamps. His heart still hammered from the ride. You can turn around, he told himself softly. Go home, wait for the police, pretend you never saw her eyes. He knew he would not. He eased the bike back into deeper shadow, tucked it between a stack of old pallets and a dumpster, and pulled his jacket tighter. Then he started walking. Up close, the warehouse they had chosen did not look abandoned at all. The outer walls were the same faded gray as the others, streaked with rust and old rain. But the main loading doors had been replaced. Fresh steel, no dents, no graffiti, clean weld marks around the frame. A keypad glowed faintly on the wall beside the door. A small black dome the size of a fist watched the yard from above it. Infrared, he guessed. Motion, at least. He stayed low, moving from shadow to shadow, until he reached a stack of crates near the back corner of the building. From there, he could see part of the side entrance. He saw them unload Astra. Two of the armored figures climbed out of the van and took her weight as a third opened the side door. The man with the neuro-lock controller walked ahead, his gaze sweeping the yard. Astra's feet touched the ground, then slipped. Her legs did not seem to listen to her anymore. The ring around her neck glowed in slow pulses. She was not entirely unconscious. Her head lifted once, her eyes opened a crack. She did not fight. "Subject is stable," the man with the controller said. His voice carried clearly in the open space. "Neural suppression holding at 60%. Increase to 70 if she starts adapting." "Copy that," one of the others said. They guided her toward the side door. One of them tapped a code into the keypad. The lock clicked. The door opened to a wash of white light. They vanished inside. The door shut behind them with a solid, heavy finality. Evan let the breath out of his lungs very slowly, as if afraid the sound might carry. He scanned the wall, the roofline, the gaps where pipes and vents emerged. At the far end of the building, near a cluster of rusted tanks, a thin metal ladder ran up to the roof. He counted the rungs, judged the distance, and felt his stomach tighten. "Sure," he whispered, "why not add heights?" He moved along the crates, keeping the bulk of them between himself and the camera dome. At each step, he waited for the soft whine of an alarm, the slam of boots behind him. Nothing. The ladder was rough with old paint. His fingers slipped once, then found their grip. He climbed with slow, deliberate care, listening to his own breath and the small clinks of metal under his weight. Halfway up, he glanced back. The yard looked even emptier from above. The bike was hidden, no other vehicles moved. At the top, he pulled himself onto the roof and lay flat for a moment, letting his muscles stop shaking. The tar surface was cold through his clothes. He crawled toward the center of the roof. The vents were easy enough to find. Rectangular metal boxes with grates that exhaled faint streams of warm air. The sound of fans hummed inside them. A larger duct, wide enough for him to squeeze through, rose near the middle. Its grate was secured by 4 screws, 3 of which were rusted almost flat. The 4th had been replaced. Someone had been here more recently than the rest of the building suggested. He slid a small multi-tool from his pocket, just a cheap thing he used to fix shelves and chair legs at the shop, and began to work at the newer screw. Metal squeaked softly. He froze, waited, then kept going. It took longer than he liked, but the screw loosened. He set it aside, then carefully levered the grate free and slid it onto the roof. Warm air flowed out, carrying the smell of disinfectant, recycled air, and something metallic and sharp. He lowered himself into the duct, feet first, and inched forward on his elbows, letting the darkness swallow him. Minutes passed in that crawling space. The metal vibrated faintly with the thrum of machinery below. The fans made a low, constant noise that covered some of his movements, but not all. Every time he shifted his weight, the duct gave a small protesting creak. He stopped 3 times to let his hammering heart quiet. Inside the warehouse, time did not care about his fear. It moved anyway. He found a vantage point above a larger opening in the ductwork where thin slats let air pour down into a room. Through the narrow gaps, he saw white walls, white floor, white lights that hummed with steady, clinical indifference. In the center of the room stood a metal chair bolted to the floor. Its frame was heavy, the kind used for industrial machinery and repurposed for people who were not supposed to stand up. Astra sat in it. Thick restraints ran across her wrists and forearms, anchored to flat metal rails. Bands strapped her ankles to supports. A curved brace held her chest in place, rising between her shoulders to cup the back of her head. The neuro-lock ring still encircled her throat. Its blue light pulsed in a slowing rhythm. Her eyes were open now, focused, watching. Around her, 6 people in dark uniforms moved between consoles and equipment racks. 2 wore helmets with tinted visors, their hands never far from holstered weapons. The others wore simple headsets. Their jackets bore the same triangle and line emblem he had seen on the van. One of them, a man with close-cropped hair and sharp cheekbones, stood closest to Astra. His jacket had an extra insignia at the shoulder. 3 small silver bars. Neural suppression at 70%. A technician called out. Muscle response is minimal. Cognitive activity within acceptable range. Keep it there, the officer with the silver bars said. We need her lucid enough to respond. His voice was flat. No anger. No enjoyment. Just function. Evan pressed his cheek closer to the slats, trying to see more without being seen. A console at the man's side displayed several windows. One showed a medical readout. Heart rate, blood pressure, neurological activity, rendered as dancing lines. Another showed a diagram of something that did not look like a human body at all. It was a sphere, or rather, a cluster of spheres, nested inside each other, wrapped in layers of fine structure. Lines of numbers scrolled along the edges. Status on the other asset? The officer asked. A second technician did not look up from his screen. Nira Vera remains stable in deep sedation. He said, her readings are consistent with the last 10 days. No signs of active resistance. 10 days. The words landed in Evan's chest like a weight. He had watched Astra describe her sister in the mirror that afternoon. Quiet, tired, on the edge of leaving. Now he knew why there had been no goodbye. And the node? The officer asked. Helion node integrity confirmed, the technician said. It remains bonded to Nira's biosignature. All attempts to decouple have failed. Good, the officer said. That means the original lock is intact. He turned his head, slightly, toward Astra. She met his gaze with clear, cold eyes. You built this lock, he said. You helped design the architecture. You and your people decided who could open it and who could not. I maintain systems, Astra said. Her voice was rough, but controlled. I did not build weapons for you. You built them for yourselves. He replied. We are simply catching up. Another screen lit up behind him, showing a different room. Evan could not see all of it through the narrow slats, but he saw enough. A woman lay on a table inside a transparent shell. Tubes ran from her arms to machines nearby. At the center of her chest, just below the collarbone, something glowed faintly under the skin. A pattern of lines and points, like a constellation trying to push its way out. Nira. Even blurred by distance and glass, Evan could see the resemblance. Same jawline, same shape around the eyes. If Helion node can be opened, the officer said, it should not belong to a single culture that arrived here uninvited. We did not arrive as conquerors, Astra said. You arrived with technology we do not understand, he said. Technology that can change our position in every equation that matters. War, trade, survival. You want us to remain dependent on whatever decisions your councils make. I want my species to stand on its own feet. He glanced at one of the cameras in the corner of the room as if aware someone else was listening. Director Draven shares my view, he added, and the Axiom Recovery Division does not waste opportunities. The name hung in the air, sharp as the smell of disinfectant. Axiom Recovery Division. Evan repeated it in his mind, fixing it in place with the same care he used when memorizing a client's preferences. We can help you avoid mistakes that will kill billions, Astra said. We will make our own mistakes, the officer answered. Now, let us begin. He gestured to the technician. Bring the secondary subject to interface level consciousness, he said. Prepare a test handshake. On the screen, the machines around Nira shifted mode. Indicator lights changed color. Lines on the monitor rose and fell in new patterns. Initiating, the technician said. Estimated time to first contact, 3 minutes. In the duct above them, Evan swallowed. 3 minutes. The officer stepped closer to Astra. You will assist, he said. If you do, this can be controlled. We keep both of you alive. We share what we learn, when it is safe. And if I refuse? Astra asked. He did not answer right away. When he spoke, his voice was even. Then we will proceed without your consent, he said, and we will learn more slowly. She held his gaze, but her hands tightened against the restraints. Below the floor level calm, everything in the room was moving toward a point. Up in the duct, time thickened. Evan watched, listened, calculated. He had 3 minutes, maybe less. He also had one narrow metal corridor and a body that had been trained for fights in rings and alleys. Not labs staffed by armed professionals. The rational part of his mind made a list of reasons to wait. Let the police arrive. Let someone with a badge and protocol handle it. The part of him that had swung a leg over a motorcycle instead of walking away did not believe in waiting anymore. He began to back away from the vent, inch by inch, careful not to rattle the slats. Finding the way down was harder than climbing in. The duct led him back toward the outer wall before it branched near what he guessed was an internal corridor. He paused at each junction, listening for footsteps, voices, any sign that someone was directly below. When he reached a vertical shaft, he braced his feet against opposite sides and slid down, stopping just above another vent. Soft light leaked through the edges. He pressed his ear against the metal. He heard boots, not moving fast, a bored pace, one person, maybe two. He eased the screws on this grate with painstaking slowness, one hand catching each before it could fall. When the metal loosened enough, he pushed it forward a fraction and peered through. A hallway stretched in both directions. Concrete floor, white painted walls, doors at intervals with small numeric plates. A single guard stood near a side door. Attention divided between the corridor and a handheld device. No helmet, no visor, just a man doing a job. Evan let himself breathe out once, very quietly. Then he moved. He pushed the grate the rest of the way, swung his legs out, and dropped. His shoes hit the floor with only a small thump. The guard turned. Evan was already moving forward. He did not try to shout. He did not give the man time to think. He stepped inside the guard's reach, one hand snapping up to redirect the weapon hand, the other driving into the soft place just above the hip, where balance began. As the guard folded, Evan shifted behind him, hooked an arm around his neck, and squeezed. The guard struggled for 3 seconds. 4. His heel scraped against the floor. Then he sagged. Evan eased him down to the ground, panting softly, every nerve alight. He stared at the unconscious man. He had never done that outside of a controlled practice ring, never felt the real, panicked jerks of someone who did not want to go to sleep. He swallowed hard. "Sorry," he whispered. "I'll send flowers if you wake up and come find me." He pulled the man toward the wall and laid him flat behind a stack of storage crates that stood just inside the corridor. Not perfect cover, but better than nothing. He checked for keys, ID, weapons. He found a compact sidearm with a humming core and a small green indicator light. The safety was a simple thumb switch. He switched it off, then back on, making sure he understood it. He also found a thin plastic card clipped inside the man's jacket. It bore the emblem of the triangle and line, and under it, in small letters, the words Axiom Recovery Division. Employee credentials, name, clearance level. He resisted the urge to read the name. It felt too personal. Instead, he took the card and the weapon and moved to the side door. A small panel waited beside the handle. It had a slot exactly the size of the card. His hand shook as he slid it in. For a second, nothing happened. Then the panel beeped, a neutral tone, and the lock clicked. He pushed the door open. The room beyond was smaller than the central chamber. No white walls, just bare concrete and a single metal table. On it lay a set of devices that could only have been restraints. And on a chair bolted to the floor beside it, another unit like the one that had been clamped to Astra's neck. A neuro lock, resting open, its inner surface lined with faintly glowing circuits. He stepped past it, heart hammering, and crossed to the opposite door. This one had a simple handle. No panel. He pressed his ear against it. Voices seeped through, muffled, but recognizable. "Not seeing the signature we expected," a technician said. "The node is responding, but the handshake is unstable. Adjust parameters within safe range," the officer said. "Do not exceed them." Director Draven was clear. "If we want cleaner data, we should raise the level," the technician said. "And kill the subject?" the officer replied. "That would be wasteful." Evan's grip tightened on the stolen weapon. He did not understand all the words, but he understood enough. They were playing with something inside Nira that could kill her. They were willing to risk it. He took a breath. The world narrowed to a line between his hand and the door. He yanked it open and stepped through. The white light struck him first. It washed over his eyes, erasing the hallway's shadows in a flash. For half a second, everyone in the room seemed to freeze. Astra in the chair, the officer with the silver bars, 2 technicians, 1 helmeted guard near the far wall. They all turned. Evan did not wait for them to process. He raised the weapon, thumb already on the trigger. He did not aim at anyone's head or chest. He aimed at the neuro-lock controller on the nearby console. The beam that leapt from the barrel was a narrow cone of pale energy. It struck the device dead center. The plastic shell cracked. Sparks flared. The soft blue line on the corner display winked out. The ring around Astra's neck flickered. Her eyes widened. "Hey," Evan said, voice coming out rougher than he expected. "Think you grabbed the wrong girl from the wrong street." The helmeted guard reacted first. He swung his own weapon up. Evan dove sideways. The beam sliced past, close enough that the hair on his arm prickled. One of the technicians dove for an alarm switch on the wall. Astra moved. The neuro-lock ring had not powered down entirely, but with its controller damaged, its hold faltered, the suppression eased, just enough for muscles to obey again. She twisted, sending the chair into a small, sharp tilt that threw off the guard's aim. The next shot scorched the floor. Evan came up on one knee and fired again, this time at the overhead lights. Glass shattered. One of the light panels burst, plunging half the room into dimness. The others flickered, throwing everything into a stuttering mess of shadows. The technician's hand slammed onto the alarm. A harsh, rising tone filled the room. "Security breach in Lab 1. A mechanical voice blared. "All units respond." The officer reached for his sidearm. "Calm even now. Do not fire on the subjects," he snapped. "We need them alive." Evan did not stay to argue. He rushed forward, ducking under a wild shot from the guard, and slammed into the side of Astra's chair. It rocked on its bolts, metal groaning, but held. "Can you move?" he said. "Not yet," she rasped. "Controls at the base. 2 switches. Left side. Red, then black." He dropped to one knee, fumbling along the frame until his fingers found the control box she meant. 2 toggles waited there, guarded by a small plastic cover. He flipped it up, hit red, then black. The restraints on her arms hissed. The bands around her legs unlocked with a clack. The brace behind her head loosened. Her hand shot up, fingers finding the seam of the neurolock. She pulled. It resisted. She pulled harder, a low sound escaping her throat. The ring snapped. It fell to the floor. Lights dead. The helmeted guard lunged at Evan, using the butt of his weapon like a club. Evan raised his forearm. The blow landed, sending a shock up to his shoulder. Pain flared, hot and bright. He stepped into the guard's space, the way he had been taught years ago, and drove his elbow into the man's ribs. The armor took most of it, but not all. The guard grunted and staggered sideways. Astra pushed herself up from the chair. Her legs trembled, but they held. "Door," she said. "We need a door, now." "The hallway I came from," Evan said. "Behind me." The officer lifted his weapon. Astra grabbed the metal chair by the back and shoved it toward him. It slid across the smooth floor, heavy and fast. He had to leap aside to avoid being hit. The weapon's shot went wide and carved a smoking groove into the wall. "Stop them," he shouted. But momentum had already shifted. Evan grabbed Astra's arm, more for balance than to drag her, and they ran. The corridor outside the lab was already filling with sound. Boots pounded on concrete. The alarm's steady howl vibrated in his bones. "This way," he said, turning back toward the smaller room with the spare neurolock and then the vertical duct. "Not toward the main exit?" Astra asked. "Main exits are where people expect you to run," he said. "I prefer surprises." "Acceptable," she managed. They pushed through the side door and slammed it behind them. For a moment, the hallway's noise dulled. Astra's breath came ragged and fast. Her skin had gone pale under the strange undertone of her complexion. The mark on her chest pulsed faintly where the neurolock had pressed. "You should not have come," she said. "Too late to file a complaint now," he said, Up there. He pointed to the open vent above. She looked at the wall. Then at him. You first, she said. You know the path. He wanted to argue that she should go first. That she was the one they actually wanted. But the sound of boots getting closer made the decision for both of them. He holstered the stolen weapon. Jumped. Caught the lower lip of the vent. And pulled himself up with muscles that complained but obeyed. From this angle, the shaft seemed even narrower. He twisted. Reached down. Astra grabbed his wrist. For someone who had just been partially paralyzed, her grip was still iron. He braced his feet against the duct walls and hauled. She climbed the rest of the way under her own power. Teeth clenched. When she was inside, they shoved the grate back into place as best they could. Footsteps thundered into the small room below. Voices rose, sharp, frustrated. Where did they go? They could not have reached the main hall in that time. Check the upper corridors. Evan and Astra lay flat in the darkness, pressed against the cold metal, breathing as quietly as they could. Seconds stretched. Somewhere deeper in the building, another klaxon began to sound, louder and lower, layered under the first. That one means external security is locking down. Astra whispered, they will contain the perimeter. And then they will hunt inward. You say that like you have heard it before. He whispered back. I have heard similar systems on other worlds, she said. He did not ask for details. There would be time, or there would not. A vibration ran through the ductwork. A heavy thud sounded above them. Then another. The building was shifting into a different mode. He crawled. The route back to the roof felt longer than it had on the way down. Every scrape magnified by his awareness of the people moving below. At one point, the duct bent over the central lab again. He caught a flash of the room through a different grate. The chair was empty. The officer stood in the center of the floor, speaking into a headset. We are evacuating node support equipment, he said. Purge the non-essential records. Clean the site. When the police arrive, they will find a fire and a very unfortunate structural failure. And the subjects? A voice crackled back. The younger one remains in deep sedation. He said, we will relocate her as planned. The older one and her human accomplice are still inside. But that will not last. Evan gritted his teeth. Their names are Astra and Nira. He whispered, too softly for anyone but himself to hear. He did not want the man below to have the last word. They reached the roof as the first traces of smoke began to curl from one corner of the building. Somewhere below, something had been set to burn. The night air hit them like a cold hand. Sirens wailed in the distance. Closer now, converging on the industrial zone. From the edge of the roof, Evan could see the flashing lights of approaching vehicles painting the sky in blue and red pulses. Astra stumbled, caught herself on a vent, and forced her breathing into something like a steady rhythm. They will have an extraction route, she said. They never come without one. Backside of the building, he said, there was a service road. No cameras. Perfect for disappearing. Can we reach it? She asked. He thought of the ladder. The yard. The patrol patterns he had glimpsed in that first minute of hiding. Maybe, he said, if we do not try to be heroes. She gave him a look that, even through exhaustion, carried a faint spark. You already failed that, she said. You came in anyway. Bad habit, he said. I cut hair. I fix things. I walk into messes I could have avoided. And now? She said. He looked toward where he had left his bike. It was still there, a dark shape wedged between pallets and a dumpster. At least the ride home is covered, he said. If we live long enough to take it, she replied. They moved along the roof, found a different ladder on the far side, and climbed down as quietly as they could. By the time they reached the ground, the first police vehicles had rolled into the front of the complex. Officers spilled out, weapons drawn, forming a perimeter around the main entrance of the warehouse. On the far side, where the service road cut between two rows of silent buildings, a different kind of vehicle waited. Sleek, unmarked, engine already humming. As Evan and Astra slipped between shadows, the car pulled away from the curb and vanished into the dark. He knew, without needing to see inside, that Nira was in it, that the Helion node still burned under her skin, that the Axiom Recovery Division was not done. Not with her. Not with Astra. Not with him. They reached the bike. Astra swayed once, then steadied. "Can you ride?" she asked. "I can if you can stay on," he said. She looked back at the flashing lights, the rising smoke, the silhouettes of officers shouting at each other as they tried to make sense of a building that was already erasing its secrets. Then she looked at him. "You came in," she said. "You did not have to. You had no reason, no training, no orders." "I had eyes," he said. "I had a choice. That was enough." For the first time since he had met her, her expression softened into something that was not tiredness or calculation. "For the record," she said, "I do not think you are just a barber anymore." "For the record," he said, "I'm not sure what that makes me." She climbed onto the back of the bike, movements still careful but more her own now. "It makes you involved," she said quietly. He started the engine. The sirens screamed, the smoke thickened. Somewhere behind them, a man with 3 silver bars on his shoulder began planning how to erase 2 people from a larger equation. Evan Rook steered the bike toward the dark edge of Greywater Cove, carrying a stranger who was no longer completely strange, and the weight of a war he did not yet understand. The industrial zone fell behind them in broken flashes of blue and red. Evan kept the bike low and fast, staying off the main roads, cutting through side streets and service lanes that only people who lived here would know. Astra held on behind him, arms tight around his waist, her breath warm against the back of his neck despite the night air. Sirens clawed at the sky over their shoulders. Somewhere back there, police were trying to make sense of smoke and collapsed structures and a lab that had wiped itself clean. He did not slow down until the lights were small and distant and the only sounds left were the engine and the faint roll of the ocean. "We can't go back to town," Astra said, close to his ear. "They will have watchers in every direction." "Wasn't planning on going home to finish the shift," he said. "Do you have anywhere else?" she asked. He thought about that. He did not have safe houses. He had never needed them. He had repair bills, a favorite diner, and a bar that still let him run a tab. None of that counted now. "There's a place," he said, "not good, but quiet." He turned the bike toward the northern edge of Greywater Cove, where the streetlights thinned and the buildings turned from shops and houses into low, forgotten structures with boarded windows. The garage sat behind a row of defunct auto stores, its sign hanging crooked from 2 rusted chains. The paint had peeled so badly that the letters were just ghosts of something that might once have said service. Evan cut the engine and let the quiet rush in. He rolled the bike toward the side door, shoulders tense, listening. No voices, no traffic, just the slow drip of water from a broken gutter and the soft whisper of wind across cracked asphalt. He pulled a key from his pocket. "You keep a spare lair out here?" Astra asked. "Belongs to a friend who left town," he said. "I fix things. People leave me keys when they go. Just in case." The lock protested, then turned. The door opened on the smell of dust, oil, and old rubber. He pushed the bike inside. Astra followed, moving cautiously, one hand on the wall to steady herself. The neurolock had left a faint, bruised circle around her throat. Her legs still trembled now and then, like signals were taking the long way around. He closed the door and flipped on a single bare bulb that hung from the ceiling. The interior of the garage was a cavern of shadows. A couple of sheeted shapes hinted at cars that had not seen daylight in years. Tools hung on pegboard along one wall. A metal workbench sagged under the weight of parts and containers. Evan listened one more time. Nothing. He let out a breath. "For tonight," he said, "this is home." Astra leaned against the workbench, fingers pressing lightly into the wood, as if testing whether it would hold. "Do they ever come back?" she asked. "Who?" he said. "The ones who leave you keys," she said. "The ones who trust you to fix things." "Sometimes," he said, "sometimes not." He grabbed an old crate, brushed off the dust, and set it near her. "Sit before you fall," he said. She almost argued. He saw it in the way her jaw shifted. Then she gave in and lowered herself onto the crate. Her shoulders sagged. For the first time since he had met her, she looked less like a controlled system and more like a person whose day had gone very wrong. He found a half-empty bottle of water on the bench, sniffed it, decided it was only water. and handed it over. She drank slowly, careful not to let her hands shake. "Thank you," she said. "Low bar," he replied. "If I drag someone out of a lab, I at least owe them hydration." The corner of her mouth moved. It was not a full smile, but it was something. Silence settled between them for a moment. It was not comfortable, but it was not hostile either. Just full. Outside, the distant hiss of the ocean filled the gaps. Time stretched. The night seemed to press closer around the thin walls. "Your world is loud," Astra said softly, "even when it is quiet. You should hear it during tourist season," he said. "Cars, boats, music, kids screaming because the water's colder than it looks. People come here to pretend they live by the sea, then go home before winter." "Do they ever see up?" she asked. He frowned. "At what?" he said. She tilted her head, eyes on him. "At the sky," she said, "at the things that move there when the sun is down and the clouds are thin." "I saw a weird video on the news this morning," he said. "Orbital signals, a flare, then they cut to detergent." "That was them," she said. "Them?" he echoed. She reached into the inner pocket of her jacket and drew out a small, dark object wrapped in a strip of cloth. She unwrapped it carefully, revealing a device that fit neatly in the palm of her hand. It was a flattened oval, matte black, with a few faint lines carved across its surface. No visible buttons, no screen, just a piece of something that looked, at first glance, like art. "This is not a weapon," she said. "This is a scanner. It reads specific patterns in biological fields." "Like DNA?" he asked. "More like the residual echo of a nervous system in motion," she said. "Your science will reach it eventually. Ours had a head start." "Yours," he repeated. "So that's official now. You're not from around here in the big sense." She met his gaze. "My home is called Vara's Lin," she said. "It is not the brightest star in your sky. It is not marked on any of your charts. We learned to move between systems before we learned to conquer other worlds. So we chose not to conquer them at all." He let that sink in. "No armies," he said. "No expansion?" "Exploration," she said. "Observation. Trade where invited. We are cautious by necessity. There are older powers than us in the dark. Some build empires. Some harvest technologies instead of crops. We have had to be careful." "And your sister?" he asked. "Nira is a field engineer," Astra said. "She maintains survey nodes, calibrates sensors, ensures that what we think we are seeing is what is actually there." "The Helion node," he said. Surprise flickered in her eyes. "You heard that name," she said. "I hear a lot," he said. "People talk in barbershops, and labs where they think the subject is restrained." A muscle in her cheek jumped. "They should not even know the word," she said. "It is not meant to travel." "Well, Axiom Recovery Division knows it," he said, "and they know you and Nira carried it here." Astra looked down at the scanner in her hands. "Helion node is not a weapon," she said. "It is a seed, a compressed map of how we organize thought and computation. It can grow into many shapes, depending on the soil you plant it in." "On my world," Evan said, "that still sounds like something people would kill for." "They already have," she replied quietly. He thought of the second room he had glimpsed through the lab's screens. Nira lying under that shell. Lines sinking into her arms. Light burning under her skin. "You brought it here," he said. "To us. Why? We didn't invite you." "Not all invitations are spoken out loud," Astra said. "Your world broadcasts into space constantly. Radio, television, data, noise. Somewhere in that noise, we heard patterns of curiosity, creativity, and violence held barely in check by fragile systems." "Flattering," he murmured. "Dangerous," she corrected. "To you, more than to us. Helion node was sent as a test. A way to see if your species could integrate new knowledge without tearing itself apart." "And Nira?" he asked. "Nira volunteered," Astra said. "She believed in the experiment. She believed in you. She believed that, if contacted carefully, your people could become allies. That you would not try to grab everything at once." "Someone beat us to grabbing," he said. "Axiom," she said. "Your people with the triangle and line. They are not the only group who hunt technologies that are not theirs. But they were fastest here." She looked up. And now they have Nira," she said, "and they will not stop until Helion node opens. For them." The bulb overhead buzzed softly. "Why tell me all this?" he asked. "I'm just the guy who cuts hair and makes bad jokes." "You walked into their lab," she said. "You did not run when the door opened. You remembered names you were not meant to hear. You are not just anything anymore." He leaned back against the wall, feeling the rough concrete through his jacket. Outside, the wind pushed against the metal door, trying to find a way in. An hour slipped by in that cold circle of light while they talked. "Can that thing find her?" he asked finally, nodding at the device in her hands. Astra looked at the scanner, as if she had forgotten it was there. "It can find echoes," she said. "It can follow the trace of Vera biology where it intersects with local fields. Nira and I share enough markers that I can use my pattern to filter hers." "In English," he said. "In your terms?" she said. "It is a very sensitive tracking dog that only understands one scent." "That," he said, "I get." She turned the scanner over, pressed a sequence along its surface. Tiny, almost invisible lines lit up, pulsing softly. The air in the garage felt different when it powered fully. Not charged, not like static, but aware, somehow, like the space inside the walls had been turned into a drumskin waiting to be struck. Astra closed her eyes. "This will take time," she said. "Your planet is noisy. So many signals, so many machines, so many hearts. Take what you need," he said. "We're off the grid here. For now." She adjusted a setting, and a faint three-dimensional shape shimmered above the scanner. No bigger than her hand. It looked like a map of gradients and lines. Nothing recognizable as streets or terrain. "This is the field around us," she said. "We are here." A small point glowed at the center. "Earlier, at the warehouse, the trace was strong," she said. "They had Nira there, or at least Helion node was near." She dialed the sensitivity wider. The shape stretched. New threads appeared, faint and tangled. "Now, the direct signal is weaker," she said. "They moved her, or they moved the node. But they cannot clean everything. There are always remnants, side effects, especially if they used your infrastructure to move equipment. Power lines," he said, "communication relays. And whatever your military installed when they first built their bases." She added. She shifted the filter again. Sections of the field map dimmed. Others brightened. A single arc began to emerge, like a trail of disturbed water glowing under the surface. "It went north," she said, "then east, not far, perhaps 40 of your kilometers." "Anything that way?" he asked. "Bases, stations." She glanced up, waiting. He thought back. Old stories. Regulars in his chair who had served and then aged out, talking about assignments and places that no longer officially existed. "There was a naval complex," he said slowly. "Cold War relic, decommissioned, at least on paper. Nobody goes near it. Some say it's contaminated, some say it's haunted, depends on how much they've had to drink." "Your people built a lot of ghosts," Astra said. "It's a hobby," he said. "The complex has a designation. I've heard the number. K7, Northern Naval Complex K7. The scanner's projection drew a faint ring around a point. "That matches," Astra said. "The residual field converges there." "So she's there," he said. "Not necessarily," Astra replied. "By now, they have likely moved her to somewhere even more secure. But Helion node interacts with environments in a very specific way. K7 still holds that imprint." "And if we go there?" he asked. "We will find the next link in the chain," she said. "Power usage records, transport logs, the equipment they left behind when they ran. Axiom works like an intelligence organism. It does not waste usable structures." He rubbed his eyes. "How long do we have before they track us here?" he asked. "That depends," she said. "Did you see any drones above us while we rode? Any unusual lights?" "Just the sirens behind us," he said. "They have your face now," she said. "Your voice, your gait. They will run it through their systems. Cross-reference social feeds, local cameras, government files. They will find Evan Rook, barber, no criminal record. Then they will start guessing where someone like that would go." He looked around at the garage. "I'm not predictable enough to be a stereotype," he said. You were predictable enough to go somewhere you had a key for," she said gently. He had no answer to that. The scanner's field stabilized, holding the arc toward the northeast, as if insisting. "We need to move," Astra said, "but we should rest first. If we go to K7 exhausted, we will make mistakes. You look like you could use a minute," he said. "So do you," she replied. They split the last of the water. He found 2 old blankets in a cabinet and shook the dust off them as best he could. One went to her. The other he folded and used as a makeshift pillow against the wall. The bulb overhead flickered once, then steadied. Outside, the wind changed direction. The smell of the sea drifted in through a crack. Time crept forward. Somewhere far from that forgotten garage, other people were not resting at all. The room where Holt Kessin waited for the connection to stabilize was the exact opposite of the garage. It was clean, climate-controlled, submerged somewhere below ground or sea. The walls were matte black. The lighting indirect. Every surface that could reflect light had been engineered not to. In the center of the room, a circular table projected a hollow map of the region around Greywater Cove. Lines traced roads, railways, power grids. Points of light marked assets and possible threats, each tagged with shifting data. Kessin stood with his hands folded behind his back, helmet off, hair damp with sweat from the operation at the warehouse. His ribs still ached where that unexpected elbow had landed. He watched as a new icon blinked onto the map, a stylized letter D. The incoming link. A vertical pane of light unfolded above the table. Director Malek Draven's image resolved in the air, crisp as if he stood on the other side of a window. He was older than Kessin, though not so old as some of the council members Kessin had briefed before. His hair had gone salt at the temples, but his posture was straight. His eyes did not look tired. They looked awake in a way that made most people uncomfortable. "Kessin," Draven said, "your report at the site was truncated. Elaborate." "Yes, Director," Kessin said. "We secured the secondary subject and removed essential node support hardware before the police arrived. Lab 1's self-destruct protocols functioned within parameters. No significant evidence remains." "The primary subject?" Draven asked. "Astra Vera escaped," Kessin said. He did not flinch when he said it. "Assisted by a local." Draven tilted his head slightly. "Describe the local," he said. "Male," Kessin said. "Early 30s. No military bearing I could see. But he moved well for a civilian. Likely martial arts training. He bypassed our outer perimeter, infiltrated through ventilation, and disabled the neuro-lock controller with a single accurate shot from one of our own weapons." Draven's gaze sharpened. "And he exfiltrated the subject under your command's nose," he said. "Yes," Kessin said. Silence followed. It did not feel like condemnation. It felt like calculation. "In the lab, he prioritized equipment over personnel," Draven said. "He did not shoot to kill. He aimed at systems," Kessin said. "Power, controls, restraints. He destructed hardware, not people." Draven's fingers tapped once on something outside the frame. "Do we know who he is?" he asked. Kessin nodded toward the map. A smaller window opened beside it, displaying a still image captured from an enhanced version of the lab's surveillance feed. Evan's face, framed by the chaos of broken light and smoke. "We ran this through municipal and federal databases," Kessin said. "Name: Evan Rook. Occupation: barber. Owner of a small shop in Greywater Cove. No criminal record. No military, corporate, or intelligence background." "And yet," Draven said, "he walked into a secure black site lab and removed our highest value subject." "Yes," Kessin said again. Draven did not smile. "Exactly." His expression shifted in a way that suggested a kind of grim appreciation. "Humans are not datasets," he said. "They are messes of habits and contradictions. They do unexpected things. That is why we exist. To steer those messes away from extinction." He folded his hands. "Astra Vera we can predict," he said. "She will follow her sister's trail. She will attempt to retrieve Helion node or destroy it. That is the loyalty pattern we have seen in her species." He nodded toward Evan's frozen face. "This man we cannot predict yet," he said. "He is not on any list. He is not bound by oath or ideology we understand. He is bound by something simpler. A choice he made, once, in an alley. Do you want him neutralized? Kessin asked. I want him alive, Draven said. Under observation. People like him are either seeds or sparks. Useful, if guided. Dangerous, if not. He glanced toward a secondary display Kessin could not see. What of the younger Vera? Draven asked. She has been moved as ordered. Kessin said. Transport Sigma has already left the region. Destination compartmentalized to Alpha clearance only. Good, Draven said. Keep it that way. If Astra wants her back, she will have to follow breadcrumbs we place. That gives us leverage. Yes, Director, Kessin said. Draven's gaze returned to the map over Greywater Cove. Expand your search radius, he said. Astra has technology that will not sit quietly. She will attempt to track us. Her devices will spike fields. Our sensors should catch that. Cross-reference with locations that match Evan Rook's known patterns. We have already pulled his financial records and communication logs, Kessin said. He closed his shop tonight without returning. No calls to friends or family. His last known position was near the industrial zone. Then assume he chose the nearest location that matched his preference for familiar ground. Draven said. Garages, workshops, places where he can fix things. His eyes cooled, though his tone remained level. Find him, he said. Do not underestimate him again. And Kessin. Sir? Kessin said. When you have both Astra and Evan contained. Draven said. I want to speak to them myself. The connection cut. The pane of light folded back into nothing. Kessin exhaled. Slow. He turned back to the holomap. Icons shifted as new parameters rolled in. He watched as 3 possible locations lit up on the northern edge of Greywater Cove, places where old repair shops and storage facilities lay half forgotten. One of them pulsed faintly. Deploy Recon Unit 7, he said. Silent approach. Capture if possible. Confirmed Vera Tech. Lock the area. Yes, Commander. A voice responded over his shoulder. Kessin rubbed at his ribs again. Barber, he muttered. We will see. Evan woke to the sound of metal ticking. For a second, he could not place it. The garage ceiling loomed above him. The bulb now dark. The only light came from a faint, bluish glow near his feet. He pushed himself upright. Astra sat where she had before. Back against the bench, blanket around her shoulders. The scanner rested on her knees, casting gentle light across her face. You should sleep more, she said. Your body will need it. I slept enough to dream about ductwork, he said. That counts. How long? She asked. An hour, he said. Maybe 2. Hard to tell. It is almost dawn, she said. Your sky is changing color. He realized, belatedly, that the ticking sound was the old garage roof contracting as the air outside shifted temperature. Any good news? He asked, nodding at the scanner. It confirms what we saw earlier, she said. K7 holds the strongest residual trace. There is a fainter line leading away from it, but it is beyond the device's comfortable range from here. We will need to be closer to resolve it. Closer to a supposedly abandoned naval complex, he said. Yes, she said. He stood, joints protesting, and stretched. Then a soft hum cut him off. It came from somewhere above the garage, distant but growing. He went still. Astra's eyes narrowed. She adjusted a small control on the scanner. The field projection shifted, adding a new layer. There, she whispered, directly above us. Aerial drone, small, high frequency on the guidance systems. Not local design. Axiom? He said. Almost certainly, she said. He moved to the nearest covered window, peeled back a strip of taped cardboard, and peered out through the cracked glass. The sky over the back lot was a deep, pre-dawn blue. Against it, a small shape drifted, no more than a dark smudge, but moving with intent. It swept in a wide arc, paused, then tightened its circle. They're scanning, he said. They are sampling thermal signatures. Astra said. Electric fields, chemical traces, anything that smells like us. Can your device smell back? He asked. Not fast enough, she said. We need to leave. Front door is a bad idea, he said. Too exposed. Is there another way out? She said. He thought. There's a side hatch, he said, opens onto the rail yard. Tracks are dead, but the space is open. We'll be visible. In open space, she said, lines of fire are obvious. That works both ways. I prefer to see what might kill me. You're really fun at parties, he said. He grabbed his jacket and slipped his arms through. She stood, folding the blanket in one quick motion, as if leaving no trace would somehow erase their presence. He checked the bike. With that drone up there, the engine will light us up like a flare, he said. We run. We come back for it if we are very, very lucky. He moved to the side door. The lock was stiff but yielded. Cold air poured in. Beyond the narrow opening, the silhouette of the rail yard stretched under the paling sky. Rusted tracks glinted faintly. Old freight cars sat on sidings like hulks of sleeping beasts. On three, he said. We move fast. Stay low. Agreed, she said. He counted under his breath. 1. The drone's hum dipped, then rose again, closer. 2. He tightened his grip on the stolen weapon at his belt. 3. They slipped out into the open. The rail yard smelled of damp metal and long-evaporated chemicals. Gravel crunched under their shoes. Their breaths puffed white in the cold. They made it 10 steps before the drone shifted. The hum climbed into a sharper register. A beam of invisible energy swept the yard. A thin line of light flickered across the ground near Evan's feet. Like a laser pointer dragged too fast. They have us, Astra said. Lights snapped on in 3 different spots along the yard's perimeter. Not the yellow sodium glare of city lamps, but the harsh white of tactical floodlights. Figures moved in the sudden brightness. Armored, helmets down, weapons up. Stay where you are, a voice shouted. Amplified by a throat mic. Hands visible. Do you ever feel like your life got too loud too fast? Evan said. Constantly, Astra answered. She did not raise her hands. Don't, he said quietly. If they think we will surrender easily, she said, they will use less restraint when they take us. And if we run, he said. They will still shoot, she said, but at least we choose the direction. He scanned the yard. To the left, stacks of containers and old equipment created a jagged maze. To the right, the tracks ran straight until they vanished under an overpass and into a dark, black-mouthed tunnel. He pointed. Right, he said, cover is thin, but the tunnel gives us a choke point. They will predict that, she said. They haven't met me on a bad day, he said. The first stun shot lanced toward them. A narrow bolt that crackled as it passed. It hit the rail beside Esther's foot and exploded into a halo of blue sparks. She flinched, then bolted. Evan ran with her. More shots followed, too many to track individually. He felt the air pop against his back as one barely missed. Another struck a rusted drum ahead, lighting it with a brief electric flare. Move, he shouted. They cut across 2 lines of track, boots slipping on the metal, and dropped to the gravel on the other side. One of the helmets shouted coordinates. The team began to adjust, converging. A drone swooped lower, its underside now clearly visible. A gimbal-mounted sensor array scanned the yard, seeking heat, motion, anything. Evan yanked Astra down behind the skeleton of an old freight wagon. Down, he said. They'll paint us if we stay upright. They will triangulate anyway, she said. They do not trust eyes alone. Then we give them too many targets, he said. He grabbed a loose chunk of metal from the ground and hurled it in the opposite direction. The drone's sensor array flickered and shifted. 2 stun bolts slammed into the stone where the metal landed. He popped up long enough to fire a single shot at the drone. The stolen weapon's beam connected with one of the sensor pods. It spun, veered wildly, and crashed into the side of a freight car with a metallic shriek. That buys us 10 seconds, Astra said. 8, he said, maybe. They ran again, aiming for the shadow of the overpass and the tunnel beyond. Shouts rose behind them. Boots pounded on metal steps as some of the Axiom operatives climbed the freight cars for better angles. A beam cut across Evan's shoulder. Pain exploded down his arm, muscles locking for a second, then releasing. He nearly fell. A hand grabbed his elbow, held him upright. Astra. Keep moving, she said. The charge was shallow. It will fade. You say that like you've been hit before. He gasped. I have, she said, more than once. The tunnel mouth loomed ahead. A black hole under the overpass, framed by crumbling concrete and flaking warning signs. They dove into the darkness. Inside, the air was colder. It smelled of damp stone and old exhaust. The sounds of the yard became muffled, bouncing in odd ways off the curved walls. Flashlights, Astra said. They will use them, and thermal. Then we go down, he said. He remembered this place now. Kids talked about it in the shop sometimes. An old drainage channel ran along the side of the tunnel, half hidden by weeds and trash. He slid down the rocky lip and found what he was looking for, a narrow maintenance passage. Carved into the wall, access partially obscured by a metal grate bent long ago. He kicked the rest of the grate aside. In, he said. Astra squeezed into the passage first. It was barely wide enough for one person at a time. The floor sloped gently downward. He followed, dragging the grate back into place behind them as best he could. Light speared into the tunnel a second later. Harsh beams swept the tracks where they had just been. Where did they go? Someone shouted. Track the residual charge, another voice said. The last hit clipped him. Footsteps echoed, distorted. Evan and Astra pressed deeper. The maintenance passage turned once. Then again. The sounds from the tunnel faded. Water dripped somewhere ahead, a slow, patient rhythm. After what felt like too many steps to be still inside the city. The passage widened into a small chamber where old pipes met. A few rusted valves jutted from the walls. An access hatch in the ceiling led somewhere else, but its wheel was frozen with age. They stopped there, breathing hard. Evan leaned back against the cold concrete and let his head hit the wall. For a few seconds, the only sound was air moving in and out of two sets of lungs. They will search the tunnel, Astra said finally. They may find the grate, but they will not be sure how far we went. Confusion is my new favorite defense, he said. His shoulder throbbed where the stun bolt had grazed him. His forearm still ached from blocking the guard's weapon in the lab. His entire body felt like one long argument between adrenaline and fatigue. Astra sank down onto an overturned pipe. Her hands shook now that they had stopped running. The mark on her throat looked darker in the low light. You could still leave, she said quietly. Walk back toward the town. Blend in. Axiom will have to prioritize me and Nira. You could vanish. He laughed once, not because it was funny, but because the idea sounded like a story about someone else. Do you really think they'll stop looking at me now? He said. They have my face, my name, my shop. They know I can't keep my head down when people get dragged into vans. You did not know that about yourself yesterday, she said. Yesterday, I thought the strangest thing I'd see all week was a guy asking for a haircut he saw in a 30-year-old movie. He said, today, I watched a secret division of my own species torture your sister for access to something none of us understand. I think my self-knowledge has had a growth spurt. She watched him, something unreadable in her eyes. You owe me nothing, she said. My war started before you were born. My choices brought me here. Nira chose to carry Helion Node. Our risks should not become your burden. He looked down at his hands. They were the same hands that had held scissors and clippers this morning. Steady and precise, shaping other people's reflections. Now they shook a little. You came into my shop, he said. You asked for a haircut and directions to someone you loved. I gave you the haircut. I didn't give you what you really needed. Not then, when I saw them take you. Something in me objected. You called your emergency service, she said. Most would have stopped there. I tried to, he said. In my head, I heard myself saying, not my problem. Out loud, I got on the bike. I don't know what that makes me, but I know what happens if I stop halfway. He lifted his eyes to meet hers. We'll get your sister back, he said. His voice was softer than in the alley, but firmer than in the garage. And I'm not walking away. Her breath caught. In the dim light, whatever armor she had wrapped around herself thinned. On a different world, in a different life, she might have reached for his hand then. Here, in a wet concrete chamber under dead train tracks, surrounded by a city that did not know anything had changed above it. She did something smaller. She nodded. Once, slowly. Then, she said, "You are in this war. And I will make sure you understand what that means." "Seems fair," he said. She looked at the scanner. Still glowing faintly in her hand. That tiny ghost of a map pointing toward a place called Northern Naval Complex K7. "Rest while we can," she said. "When the sky is fully light, it will be harder to move unseen." He slid down the wall until he was sitting on the cold floor beside her. Above them, somewhere far through layers of stone and steel, trains that no longer ran sat on tracks that no longer mattered. Below, in that forgotten space, a barber and a woman from a star he could not name waited, breathing in sync, while the night finished turning into day. For the first time, the war between Axiom and the Vera did not belong solely to distant councils and hidden labs. It belonged to them. By the time the first pale band of daylight touched the mouth of the tunnel, the city above them had started another ordinary day. Down in the maintenance chamber, nothing felt ordinary. Evan's back had grown numb against the concrete. His shoulder still burned where the stun bolt had grazed him. He could feel his pulse in that spot. Steady now but not calm. Astrid checked the scanner one last time. "The trace has not shifted," she said. "K7 is still the strongest point." "So that's where we go," he said. "Yes," she said. "If we wait, they will have more time to move everything again. We need to cut into the chain before it vanishes." He pushed himself to his feet. "Then let's get above ground," he said. "I want to face the sky again, even if it's full of bad decisions." She almost smiled. They followed the maintenance passage back the way they had come, careful with every footstep. When they reached the grate that led into the rail tunnel, they listened for a full minute. Only the faint rumble of distant traffic reached them now. The tactical voices and echoing boots were gone. They eased the grate aside and climbed out. The tunnel was colder than before. The air dampened still. A thin line of light marked the far exit where the overpass ended. They walked toward it, shoulders brushing the stained concrete. When they stepped back into open air, the world felt too bright. Greywater Cove looked different in the early light. Less mysterious, more worn. The rail yard had settled back into its usual silence, like nothing had happened there at all. Evan led Astra along the edge of the yard, past a chain-link fence and a row of storage units. They kept to shadows as much as the rising sun would allow, moving between the backs of buildings and the scrubby fringe of trees that clung to the edge of a side road. He knew a place where old vehicles went to fade. The salvage lot had no sign anymore, just a sagging gate and a field of metal skeletons. He had cut hair for the man who used to run it. The man had died 2 years back. No one had taken over. The cars still waited. Evan found a truck that looked like it might start. A faded blue pickup with one cracked headlight and a bed full of leaves. He checked the handles. Unlocked. He slid under the steering column and popped the panel loose with fingers that had done small, careful work their whole life. Wires waited, dusty but intact. "You've done this before?" Astra asked. "On purpose?" he said. "No, but I've fixed enough ignition switches to understand the anatomy." She stood watch while he stripped insulation, twisted connections, and coaxed reluctant circuits back to life. When the engine finally coughed and then settled into a rough idle, the sound felt too loud. He adjusted the rearview mirror. "Welcome to our luxury ride," he said. "The seats are flat," she said. "That is already better than most field transports." They pulled onto the service road and headed north. The city fell away behind them in stages. Houses thinned, storefronts turned into warehouses, then into long stretches of nothing but scrub and power lines. The ocean was a constant on their right, a gray-blue strip under a sky that had not decided on its color yet. Time stretched out along the asphalt. 40 kilometers, Astra said. "At this speed, we will reach the outer perimeter in less than an hour. Gives us time to plan," he said. "And to think about all the ways this can go wrong," she said. He drummed his fingers once on the wheel. "We already passed most of those back in the lab," he said. "This is just the part where we refuse to do the math." She turned her head, watching the coastline slide by. "On Vara's Lynn," she said, "we have a word for people who go into impossible equations anyway." "What is it?" he asked. The closest translation would be, those who tilt the board, she said. Everyone else sees the pieces and the rules. They see the table itself. And what do you do with those people? He said. We try not to waste them, she said. The road curved inland. Trees closed in, taller now. Branches knotted together overhead in places where they had been allowed to grow unmanaged. A faded sign appeared on the right, half hidden by brush. U.S. Naval Facility, K7. Authorized personnel only. Someone had taken a shotgun to the lower half of the sign years ago. The holes were rusted at the edges. We are not authorized, Evan said. We bring our own authorization, Astra replied. They turned onto the access road. The asphalt here was cracked and invaded by weeds. In some places, the roots had pushed through and buckled the surface. The truck's suspension complained. At the end of the road, a high fence waited. Rows of barbed wire topped it, coiled in deliberate loops. A metal gate stood in the center, slightly ajar, the paint peeling from its bars. A small guardhouse sat to one side, its windows dusty. From a distance, it looked abandoned. Up close, it did not. The dust on the guardhouse windows had been wiped away recently in two clean rectangles. Inside, a monitor glowed faintly. A cable snaked from the building into the ground and under the fence. Two cameras that did not match the original construction watched the gate from different angles. Their housings sleek and new. Evan pulled the truck into a shallow depression behind some scrub and killed the engine. Looks like someone renovated, he said. Axiom rarely leaves useful structures to rot, Astra said. They climbed out of the truck and moved the rest of the way on foot. Staying low, using the scrub and the angle of the terrain to break lines of sight from the cameras. Near the fence, Astra crouched and placed the scanner on the ground. It can do more than track biological fields, she said. It can also listen to your electricity. She brushed her fingers across its surface. A thin antenna unfolded, no thicker than a blade of grass. Tiny arcs flickered between its segments. The device hummed softly. On its small projection field, the outline of the fence and gate materialized, then deepened as the scanner mapped the flow of current through hidden lines. Main power runs from there, she said, pointing toward an underground conduit. Old grid, so old that Axiom had to patch it with their own converters. That's this noise. She highlighted a cluster of jittering lines. And the locks? Evan asked. Modern, she said, but they still ride your old bones. She tapped a few points in the projection, isolating a segment. I can inject a loop, she said. Make the sensors think the gate is closed while it is open. Cameras will need something more analog. I can help with analog, he said. She nodded. Give me 1 minute, she said. He slid along the fence line until he was under one of the cameras. It was mounted high, but the fence provided handholds. He climbed with the same careful strength he used to move heavy furniture in the shop, testing each grip. When he reached the mounting bracket, he took a small screwdriver from his pocket. He had swapped it out for the multi-tool before leaving the garage. Better leverage. He loosened the camera's swivel just enough to tilt it upward, so that its field of view caught nothing but sky and the upper coils of wire. He did the same to the second camera. By the time he dropped back to the ground, Astra's scanner had shifted tone. Loop is in, she said. For the next 3 minutes, the system will think everything is exactly as it should be, even if we cut through. Then we don't waste our window, he said. He pulled a set of bolt cutters from the truck bed, a relic from the salvage lot, and cut through the lower portion of the fence in 3 quick bites. They slipped under the wires and into K7. Inside the perimeter, the base showed its age. 2 long, low barracks buildings sagged under patched roofs. The main operations building loomed farther in, its concrete face stained by decades of salt and rain. A rusted radar dish leaned at an angle atop a squat tower, its cables frayed and tangled. But here and there, new shapes interrupted the decay. A communication mast with fresh paint. A small dome on the roof of the operations building that had never been part of the original design. A cluster of sensor rods driven into the ground near a drainage ditch. Axiom eyes, Astra said quietly. They moved from structure to structure, keeping close to walls, checking corners, The base felt empty, but the emptiness had edges. Near the main building's side entrance, Evan stopped. A single guard stood there, helmet off, rifle slung, attention divided between the door and a handheld display. He wore no official insignia, only the triangle and line at his shoulder. "He looks bored," Evan murmured. "Bored people make mistakes," Astra said. "And sometimes they get hired because they do not ask questions," he said. "I will keep the systems busy," she said. "Can you reach him without making too much noise?" He looked at the distance. 20 meters of open space. A few broken crates scattered between. "Maybe," he said, "if he's as bored as he looks." She stepped back, raising the scanner and focusing its projection toward the building. Electric patterns danced. "Go," she said. "If I shout, hit the ground." He moved. He did not run flat out. That would draw the eye. Instead, he moved in quick segments, crossing from one scrap of cover to the next, keeping his body low. The guard yawned. He reached the last crate, only 5 meters from the man. From here, he could see the stubble on his jaw, the faint shadows under his eyes. Evan picked up a small pebble and flicked it toward the far side of the yard. It hit metal with a tiny ping. The guard's head turned. Evan closed the remaining distance in 3 silent steps. His left hand pushed the rifle barrel aside. His right arm looped around the man's throat, forearm pressing against the carotid, not the windpipe. He applied pressure, body tight against the guard's back, legs braced. The guard struggled, elbows jabbing back. One caught Evan's bruised ribs. Pain flared. He tightened his grip. "Sleep," he whispered. The guard sagged after a few seconds, knees folding. Evan eased him down, guiding the fall so that the man's head did not slam against the concrete. He pulled the body into the shadow of the wall and stripped the rifle. Checking the safety. Non-lethal rounds. High-velocity darts with capacitor heads. Enough to drop someone for minutes. "That went well," Astra said softly as she reached him. "Ask my ribs in an hour," he said. She glanced at the unconscious guard. "You are getting better at this," she said. "I'd rather be getting better at layering hair," he said. She moved to the side door. A keypad and card reader sat beside it, their casing newer than the doorframe. Astra placed her scanner against the panel. "Same principle," she said. "Old bones, new nerves." Lines glowed under her fingers as she coaxed the lock into cooperation. The door clicked. Evan raised the captured rifle. "After you," he said. They slipped inside. The interior of K7 smelled like cleaning agents and metal, overlaid on older scents of mildew and oil that had never fully left. The hallways were narrow, the walls painted in an institutional green that had faded and been touched up in uneven patches. Fluorescent strips lit the corridors with a flat, humming glow. "This level is mostly empty," Astra said. "Offices, barracks. The signal from Helion node is deeper." They moved quickly but not carelessly, passing doorways with peeling room numbers and abandoned furniture. One door stood ajar, revealing a room full of old filing cabinets, their drawers empty and labels removed. At the end of the hallway, a stairwell led down. A small camera watched the landing. Astra flicked her scanner once, and the camera's indicator light winked out. "Short-range interference," she said. "It will look like a glitch. We have seconds, not minutes. Then we don't stop to admire the decor," Evan said. They descended. The air grew cooler. The paint changed from green to bare concrete. The hum under their feet deepened, turning into the steady vibration of machinery that never rested. At the bottom of the stairs, a heavy security door blocked the way. This one had more than a keypad. A small biometric scanner waited beside it. "Your turn," Evan said. "Can that thing fake a thumbprint?" "It does not have to," Astra said. "Doors like this are often slave units. They ask a central system for permission. If I answer before the system does." She pressed the scanner against the panel. The projection field lit with a tangle of signals, converging on the door. She watched, head tilted, fingers moving in small, precise gestures. "Come on," Evan murmured. The panel beeped. The lock disengaged with a deep clunk. "After you," she said. He pushed the door open. Cold air rolled out, tinged with antiseptic and something metallic. They stepped into the heart of Axiom's work. The room at the center of Level 3 was not large, but it felt important. Banks of equipment lined the walls. Cooling units hummed softly, their vents exhaling breath that was almost frost. Cables as thick as his wrists ran along the ceiling and down into the central structure. That structure was a support cradle holding a transparent cylinder, big enough for a person. Neera lay inside. Her body floated in a clear fluid that shimmered faintly with suspended particles. Lines ran from ports in her arms and neck to the devices around the cradle. Her eyes were closed. Her hair drifted in slow waves. At the center of her chest, just below the collarbones, the skin glowed. Helion node lived there. It was not a solid thing he could fully see. It was more like a cluster of connections under the skin, focusing light into a pattern that shifted too slowly to be random. Fine lines radiated outward, disappearing into her bones. A panel at the foot of the cradle displayed her vitals. Heart rate low, body temperature cooled, metabolic activity reduced to a bare minimum. "She is in suspended metabolism," Astra said. Her voice had gone quiet, held at the edge of safe and not safe. Evan stepped closer, fighting the urge to reach out and touch the cylinder. "They're torturing her," he said, just very slowly. "They're trying to make Helion node open without asking it," Astra said, forcing gates that were not meant to be forced. She moved to the control console, eyes scanning the layout. "Can you wake her?" he asked. "If I simply reverse the process," Astra said, "it will shock both her and the node. That could trigger a protective response we do not understand. We need to decouple the interfaces first." In English again, he said, "I have to unhook the cage before I let the animal out." She said, "That's actually worse," he muttered. She brought up a schematic. A simple outline of a humanoid shape appeared, with nodes at key points: chest, spine, skull, major joints. Lines connected them to a stylized representation of Helion node at the center. "These are the contact points," she said. "Each carries a specific frequency band. If we break the pattern in the wrong order, the system will register it as tampering and may spike the output." "And if it spikes?" he said. "In a controlled lab, with the right grounding and containment," she said, "you might blow a room, burn equipment, and cripple the subject. Here, with your infrastructure and their improvisation, I do not know." He swallowed. "Take what time you need," he said. "We do not have time," she said, "but I will take what we have." She began to work. Her fingers moved across the interface, shutting down segments one by one. Each time she did, a small warning flashed. She guided the system around it, rerouting power into loops instead of dumps. Evan wandered a short perimeter, rifle ready, watching the entrances. There were 2 doors into the chamber, the one they had used, and another on the opposite side, currently sealed. He checked his watch. 2 minutes had passed since they had left the stairwell. "How long before someone notices what you are doing?" he asked. "Every change pings a log," she said. "If their oversight system is active, they already see anomalies. If it is not, we have longer." "And if they are watching us right now?" he said. "Then they have not shot us yet," she said. "That is progress." He could not argue with that. He glanced back at Neera. In the fluid, her fingers twitched. "Astra," he said. "I see it," she said. Her neuromuscular response is returning. The glow at Neera's chest shifted, pulsing in a new rhythm. The panel beeped softly. "The node is reacting to the change," Astra said. "Good. We are bringing her back along the same curve they used to take her down." "That sounds like lifting something heavy the way it fell," he said. "Sometimes gravity is the safest guide," she replied. Another segment of the schematic went dark. The panel flashed a warning in red. "Careful," he said. "Talk less," she said, "so I can think more." He shut his mouth. Seconds dragged. Finally, she exhaled. "Interfaces decoupled," she said. "Now we warm her." She keyed in a command. The fluid in the cylinder began to circulate faster. Its temperature climbing. The readouts ticked upward. Neera's lips moved. Her eyes fluttered, then opened halfway. They were cloudy at first, then focused. She saw the ceiling, the machines, the fog clinging to the edges of her vision. Then she saw Astra. Her expression broke. "Astra," she whispered. The sound was muffled by the cylinder walls. But it reached them. Astra's face softened in a way Evan had not seen before. "I have you," she said. "Stay calm. We are pulling you out." Evan found the manual release on the cradle's side. He grunted as he turned it, muscles straining against seals that had not been meant to yield quickly. The cylinder lifted with a slow hiss, fluid draining away into hidden channels. Cold air rushed in. Neera gasped, her body shaking as it remembered gravity. Evan moved forward and slipped one arm under her shoulders, the other under her knees, lifting her from the cradle. She was lighter than he expected, but the limpness made the weight awkward. "I've got you," he said. "Try not to throw up on the guy carrying you." "Who is this?" Neera muttered. "A stranger who did something stupid and now has to see it through," Astra said. "We attract similar minds," Neera said weakly. Her eyes drooped. "We cannot let her sleep yet," Astra said. "If she slips under with metabolic systems in transition, it could be dangerous." "I will jostle her," Evan said, in a caring way. He shifted Neera's weight, keeping her head steady. "Where now?" he asked. Astra glanced at the control console. "Up one level," she said, then across to a maintenance shaft. "There is a disused drainage tunnel that leads toward the coastline. It was never part of Axiom's schematic. They built on top of it." "And why do you know that?" he asked. "Because when they stole your base, they were too proud to map everything beneath it," she said. "I am less proud." He nodded toward the far door. "That way?" he said. "Yes," she said. She crossed to the panel beside it. Before she could touch it, the room's lights flickered. A low tone sounded, deeper and more insistent than any warning so far. "What is that?" Evan asked. "Someone noticed," Astra said. "They are trying to reassert control over the system." The far door unlocked with a clang. It slid open. Director Malek Draven stepped through, with Holt Kesson at his shoulder and 4 Axiom operatives fanning out behind them. Draven looked smaller in person than he had in the projection at the command table. But only in the way that screens distort. His presence filled the room anyway. His gaze swept over the central cradle, the dimmed panels, the open hatch. It paused on Neera in Evan's arms, then moved to Astra at the console. "So," he said, "you found our little workshop." His voice was measured, no surprise, no anger, just acknowledgement. "You turned my sister into a test fixture," Astra said. "We turned your gift into a possibility," Draven said. "There is a difference." "A possibility for who?" Evan asked. Draven's eyes shifted to him. "For all of us," he said. "For the species whose atmosphere you breathe and whose infrastructure you have just sabotaged." Evan tightened his hold on Neera. "Your infrastructure was connected to her heart," he said. "I call that bad wiring." "You are Evan Rook," Draven said. "Barber, local business owner, no record of civic engagement beyond paying taxes late twice in the last 5 years." "You looked hard," Evan said. "I look at everyone who steps into my equations," Draven said. "You interest me. You have no training, no background, and yet you infiltrated a secured site and removed a high-value subject from my custody." "Maybe your custody needed questioning," Evan said. Draven's gaze drifted back to Astra. "You did not die at the lab," he said. "I am glad. Your expertise is valuable. I would prefer to use it with your consent." "My consent was never requested," Astra said. "You seized it along with my sister." "I requested it tonight," Draven said. "Indirectly. Through your actions. You came here. You proved you are willing to work for what you believe. I respect that." His eyes cooled. "But belief is not enough," he said. "You know what is out there. Astra Vera. You know how many civilizations move between stars with more power than your people or mine. You know what happens to species that remain small and slow when large ones need resources. We are not livestock," Astra said. "Neither are you." "Right now, we are," Draven said. "Unless we change the rules. Helion Node can do that. It can lift us out of the possible colony category and into something like parity." "At the cost of what?" Astra asked. At the cost of turning every mind on your world into a processing element in a machine you do not understand? At the cost of risk, Draven said, which we already face without the node. The difference is that with it, we have leverage. He looked at Nira. She volunteered to bring this seed here. He said, she must have understood that some of us would plant it differently than your councils intended. She understood curiosity, Astra said. She did not consent to being gutted in a bunker by frightened men. Draven's jaw tightened a fraction. Fear is the most rational response to the universe. He said, I am simply honest enough to admit it. He gestured slightly to Kessin. Take them, he said, alive. They are worth more that way. Kessin lifted his hand. The operatives moved, weapons rising. Astra stepped in front of Evan and Nira. Listen to me, she said, voice sharp. You are playing with a system that couples quantum fields to nervous tissue. If you continue to force Helion node open like this, you will not get a clean leap. You will get cascades, contaminated states, small tears in the way your physical constants behave. And you think you can stop that? Draven asked. I know I can keep us from triggering it the wrong way. She said, if you stand down now, we can negotiate terms, shared access, safeguards, time to explain to your leaders what you are actually holding. My leaders already know, Draven said. They signed the original authorization. They voted to keep this division invisible. They chose risk over irrelevance. I am the one cleaning up the edges. He nodded once to Kessin. Last time, he said, take them. Kessin did not shout. He did not need to. Fire on legs and arms. He said, avoid core shots. Do not hit the Vera subjects in the chest. The first stun rounds left the rifles with soft crackles. Evan dove behind a bank of equipment, pulling Astra and Nira with him. The shots struck metal, leaving scorched marks. One hit the control console. The panel sparked. Alarms screamed to life. Red lights flashed along the walls. Security breach in Level 3. A mechanical voice intoned. Containment protocols engaged. Your system is about to help us. Astra shouted over the noise. What did you do? Draven demanded. I told your safety protocols the truth. She said, that Helion node is no longer under controlled parameters. Locks thudded somewhere beyond the walls. The floor vibrated as heavy blast doors began to shift into place. Sir, Kessin called, eyes scanning the status indicators. The facility is sealing. If we stay below, we risk entrapment. Draven weighed options in a heartbeat. Fall back to Level 2. He said, I will not lose assets to suffocation in a relic. Kessin signaled his squad. They began retreating toward the far door, firing in controlled bursts to keep pressure on Evan and Astra's position. A drone dropped from an overhead hatch, its rotors spinning hard in the confined space. It tracked on heat and motion, angling toward the equipment rack where the three fugitives hid. Astra grabbed a metal tray from the console and hurled it upward. It struck the drone's sensor array. The machine jerked, recalibrated, and fired a net of electrified filaments. They wrapped around the tray instead of flesh, crackling against steel. Evan peeked around the equipment bank and fired a single shot at the drone's rotor assembly. The non-lethal round struck the housing. The rotor seized. The drone spun and crashed into the wall. All units, fall back now, Draven said. Seal the level above us. We deny them easy escape. His gaze met Astra's through the chaos. You are buying seconds, he said, not freedom. Sometimes seconds are enough, she replied. He stepped through the far door. It slammed shut behind him. The main lights cut out. Backup strips flickered on, bathing the room in dim red. Containment in 30 seconds, the mechanical voice said. Evacuate to designated safe zones. Guess we are not on the safe list, Evan said. No, Astra said. We make our own exit. She pointed to a side wall where a maintenance panel sat half hidden behind equipment. There, she said. Behind that is a service conduit they did not decommission properly. He hit the panel with the butt of the rifle until the screws gave. The metal plate clanged to the floor. Behind it, a narrow shaft descended at an angle, large enough for one person at a time. Cables running along its sides. Go, she said. I will follow with Nira. He hesitated. "You can barely stand," he said. "I will stand long enough," she said. "Move." He slid into the shaft, boots scraping against the cable brackets, lowering himself by his hands. Above, he heard Astra grunt with the effort of maneuvering Nira into position. The siren climbed a note. "Containment in 10 seconds, the voice said. "Astra," he called. "Do not wait," she snapped. He kept going. The shaft became steeper, then curved. At the bottom, he dropped the last meter and landed in a low, concrete tunnel that smelled of stale water and rust. A moment later, Astra slid down beside him, half carrying, half guiding Nira. They stumbled forward as the facility groaned. Somewhere above, massive doors slammed into place. Air pressure shifted, dust rained down. "What about Draven?" Evan asked between breaths. "He will be on level 2 by now," Astra said. "He will have sealed that level and left us to whatever this building does to intruders." "And what does it do?" he said. "Flood. In some scenarios," she said. "Fire. In others. In this case, probably isolate and starve." "Nice place," he said. "Forward," she said, "before it decides to drown us." The drainage tunnel sloped toward the coast. It was never meant for people. Cables and old pipes lined the walls. Standing water pooled in uneven patches along the floor, cold around their ankles. Nira muttered in a language Evan did not understand, her head lolling against Astra's shoulder as they half-carried her. "She is stabilizing," Astra said. "Her body is waking faster than her mind. That is good. I hope she forgives us later," he said. "She will," Astra said. "She would have done the same for me." Above them, muffled thuds echoed. Explosive bolts. Maybe. Controlled demolitions. Parts of K7 were sealing themselves off. "Do you think the police will come?" he asked. "I sent a signal from the control console before you opened the cylinder," she said. "An anonymous beacon. Irregular power draw. Unauthorized transmissions. Unknown signatures. Enough to make some satellite operator nervous. And they call in someone with a badge," he said. "Yes," she said. "Your institutions are slow, but they are not blind." They reached a junction where the tunnel split. The scanner chirped softly in Astra's hand. "Left," she said. "The right branch dead ends at a surge chamber." He turned left. The air grew fresher. The sound of waves reached them, filtered through stone. "I hear something else," he said. A faint, high whine, growing louder. "A drone." "Behind us," Astra said. They sent something smaller down the shaft to sweep for survivors. The whine sharpened. Evan looked up. A circular vent near the ceiling of the tunnel glowed faintly as a small inspection drone squeezed through. Its rotors folded into a different configuration for tight spaces. It saw them and accelerated. "The weapon?" Astra asked. He checked. "Battery low," he said. "I have maybe 2 shots left." "You will not bring it down in time," she said. "Not in this space." The drone's underside opened, revealing a slim barrel. "It will fire a directional charge," Astra said. "Enough to drop us all." "Unless it overcharges," he said, "which happens when motors jam under load." He scanned the tunnel. A ventilation alcove sat ahead on the left. Inside, a large axial fan loomed, motionless now, its blades dull and streaked. He set Nira gently against the wall and pressed the rifle into Astra's hands. "If it gets close, shoot the barrel, not the body," he said. "Try to knock it off aim." "What are you going to do?" she asked. "Make your day worse," he said, "then hopefully better." He ran to the fan. A length of loose metal conduit lay on the ground nearby, half buried in debris. He grabbed it, testing its weight. It was heavy, solid. The drone closed the distance. "Unauthorized subjects," it intoned in a flat voice. "Remain still for collection." "Here," Evan muttered. "Collect this." He shoved the conduit between 2 of the fan blades and braced it against the concrete frame, wedging it as deep as he could. "Come on," he said. The drone adjusted its position, drifting to line up a clean shot. He reached for the manual override on the fan housing. The switch was old, corroded, but still labeled. He pulled it. Electricity surged. The motor tried to turn. The blades slammed against the conduit with a grinding shriek. Sparks flew from the housing. The lights in the tunnel flickered. The drone's sensors registered the spike. For a heartbeat, its systems tried to compensate, to filter out the new noise. The fan motor drew more current than the aged wiring could safely provide. The conduit acted as a short, forcing the system into overload. A bright flash erupted from the housing, followed by a sharp, concussive bang. An electromagnetic pulse rolled through the tight space like an invisible wave. The drone jerked midair, its rotors stuttering. The lights on its body died. It crashed to the tunnel floor and skidded, leaving a scratch in the concrete. The scanner beeped in protest and then stabilized. Evan's vision blurred for a second, his ears ringing. He staggered back toward Astra and Nira. "Effective," she said, blinking away spots. "Crude, but effective." "I specialize in crude," he said. "Your fancy tech just has to tolerate it." She checked the scanner again. "The pulse will confuse some of their sensors," she said. "They may think the building is eating its own circuits." "Then let's be gone while they argue with their graphs," he said. They moved on. The tunnel eventually widened into a round chamber where the ceiling lowered and then opened into a horizontal grate. Beyond the metal bars, daylight glittered on water. They could hear waves more clearly now, slapping against stone. "This is a storm outflow," Astra said. "During heavy rain, the base would shed excess water here." "No rain today," he said, "just us." The grate had been bolted shut once, but corrosion had done half the work for them. Evan kicked at the weakest points until the metal gave way with a screech. Cold air rushed in, carrying the full smell of the sea. He climbed through first, then reached back for Nira. Astra pushed from below as he took her weight. For a moment, they were a clumsy chain in the narrow opening. Then all three of them were outside. They stood in a low concrete channel that emptied onto a rocky shoreline. The ocean spread out before them, gray and restless. The wind cut through their clothes. Behind them, K7 loomed on the bluff. From here, they could see the fences, the towers, the blocky outline of the main building. They could also see the flashing lights. Dozens of vehicles had clustered at the main gate. Marked federal cruisers, unmarked sedans, a few military trucks that had not yet scraped off their official insignia. Helicopters circled above, rotors chopping the air. Sirens wailed in layered patterns. "Well," Evan said, "your anonymous tip worked. They will find evidence of something unusual." Astra said, "Power anomalies, structural damage, a few broken machines, but not the real story. Axiom will have cleared their toys," he said. "Yes," she said, "the most important ones." He looked at Nira. Her breathing had steadied, her eyes were closed again, but the tension had eased from her face. The glow at her chest had dimmed to a soft ember. "She is alive," Astra said, "and free of their machines. That is more than we had this morning." "And Draven?" he asked. "He has learned that we can reach his corners," she said. "That matters." Evan watched as a group of agents in dark jackets moved through the gate. Gesturing, pointing, dividing tasks. From this distance, they were tiny pieces on a board he did not control. "Do you think they are on our side?" he asked. "They are on their own side," Astra said. "Sometimes that will intersect with ours. Sometimes not." He turned away from the scene. "So what now?" he said. "We have you, your sister, and a world that just got weirder." Astra looked down at Nira, then up at the open water. "Now," she said, "we get far enough from K7 that no one can tag us as easy targets. We find a place where we can let her complete her recovery. And then we decide whether to run, to hide, or to tilt the board again." The wind lifted her hair. Evan adjusted his grip on Nira. "I only know how to walk forward," he said, "one street, one bad idea at a time. For now, that is enough," Astra said. They climbed the rocky slope away from the outflow, keeping low where they could, using the uneven terrain as cover from both the base and the sky. Behind them, Northern Naval Complex K7 stood like a scar on the coastline, surrounded by flashing lights and invisible currents of blame. Ahead of them, the land sloped down toward a more ordinary stretch of beach and, beyond that, The long curve of road that led back toward Greywater Cove and every choice they had yet to make. 3 figures against a too-wide world. 1 human, 2 from a star no one here could name. All of them marked now by the same conflict. The warehouse looked like every other forgotten building on the edge of town. From the outside, it was just a rectangle of corrugated metal and cracked concrete, with a roof that had seen too many winters and a sliding door that complained every time the wind pushed it. Evan had cut hair for the man who once owned this place. He had listened to stories about shipments and slow seasons and the way salt air ate everything it touched. He had never imagined coming here to leave the planet. Astra stopped a few meters from the door. "This is where Nira landed," she said. "She parked our shuttle inside and wrapped it in your noise. Metal, fuel fumes, the background hum of a dying business. Your world is very good at hiding things in plain sight." Evan adjusted his hold on Nira. She was still mostly unconscious, though her breathing had grown steadier. The faint light at her chest glimmered under his jacket. "And you're only telling me this now?" he said. "You had enough to worry about," Astra said, "and until we had her back, leaving was not an option." She placed her hand against a rusted patch of wall beside the door. For a second, nothing happened. Then something under the metal answered. A tone, too high to hear, hummed through the frame. Hidden magnets released. A second, smoother lock clicked. Astra pulled the door open. Inside, the air was cooler, darker. Dust drifted in thin beams of light that leaked through cracks in the roof. Most of the warehouse floor was empty. In the center, a shape waited under a tattered tarp. Astra walked toward it and gripped the edge of the canvas. "Help me," she said. Evan shifted Nira carefully onto a low pallet, then joined her. They pulled. The tarp slid away to reveal something that did not belong on Earth at all. It was about the size of a small bus, but sleeker, its lines smooth and purposeful. The hull was a dark gray that seemed to swallow the light instead of reflecting it. No windows interrupted its surface, only narrow bands of material that might have been sensor arrays. Near the front, a symbol glowed softly, 3 intersecting arcs that formed a kind of open spiral. "This is a Veilcraft," Astra said, "short range, designed to slip between surfaces and orbit without asking permission. Like a car that ignores traffic lights," Evan said. "More like a car that moves in a lane no one else can see," she said. He walked around it once. Slow. Up close, he could see where the hull changed texture. Tiny overlapping plates like scales. He reached out and touched it with his fingertips. It felt warm. "How has no one found this?" he asked. "The hull absorbs and redirects most of your active scans," Astra said. "Radar, lidar, thermal sweeps, and those who came close saw an empty building with no profit in it. Your species is very good at not seeing what does not offer immediate gain." "Sometimes that's useful," he said. "Today, it is," she agreed. A small section of the hull slid aside as they approached, forming a ramp. Soft light spilled out, a gentle white that did not feel like any bulb he knew. "Bring her," Astra said. He lifted Nira again and followed Astra up the ramp. The interior of the craft was compact but efficient. The floor was smooth, with panels that could fold into seating or storage as needed. The walls held recessed screens and interfaces. At the front, 2 chairs faced a curved display that wrapped almost halfway around the cockpit. A small alcove to the side held a narrow bed and a bank of medical modules. "Lay her here," Astra said. He set Nira down on the bed. The modules came alive as soon as her weight hit the surface. Scanning, projecting data into the air above her. Lines of text scrolled past. Incomprehensible to him but clear to Astra. "She is stabilizing," Astra said. "Helion node is resting. No more foreign code from Axiom. We pulled her out in time." "Good," he said. "I'd hate to think we ran through 3 different kinds of hell for nothing." She looked toward the cockpit. "We should go," she said. "The longer we stay near K7, the more likely someone notices this place is not as dead as it looks." He moved to one of the front seats. "Where do you want me?" he asked. "Here," she said, nodding to the chair beside the pilot station. "Hands visible. Don't press anything unless I tell you to. That's what I tell kids when I bring scissors near their ears." he said. She sat down and placed her hands on the controls. They were not sticks or wheels. More like rests that conformed to her fingers, with subtle resistance that made the interface feel almost like muscle. The displays lit. A view of the warehouse interior appeared on the main screen, overlaid with faint lines that marked structural supports, stress points, clear paths. Closing ramp, she said. The hull sealed behind them with a soft thud. For a moment, it was quiet enough to hear Neera's steady breaths and the faint hum of the craft systems waking. "Strap in," Astra said. A harness slid over his shoulders from the seat back. He grabbed it, feeling slightly ridiculous. "If I tell anyone about this," he said, "they'll either laugh or call the government." "You can tell them," she said. "They will make shows and stories out of it. They already do." The engines came online. He did not hear them so much as feel them. A deep vibration that started under his feet and climbed through the frame. On the screen, the warehouse walls shifted from gray static to transparent outlines. "Hold on," Astra said. The Veilcraft lifted straight up. Dust and small debris swirled on the floor below as they rose. The roof approached, its beams and rusted panels crisscrossing the view. For a second, Evan's heart jerked up into his throat. Then the craft passed through. Not by magic. The hull projected a localized field that pushed aside the weakest points in the decaying structure. Exploiting gaps and fractures, panels slid, bent, and flexed just enough to let the ship through, then settled back into their tired positions. From the outside, it would have looked like nothing more than the groan of an old roof in the wind. They climbed. Greywater Cove unrolled beneath them, the coastline a rough curve, the town a scatter of blocks and streets. The emergency vehicles at K7 were still clustered there, tiny lights flashing around the fenced compound. Higher. The horizon bent. The sky shifted from blue to a darker, deeper shade that made Evan's stomach twist. Cloud layers passed beneath them in slow, endless motion. "You can open your eyes," Astra said. "I didn't close them," he said. He realized he had been staring at the floor. He looked up. The curvature of the planet filled half the screen now. Oceans glinted, clouds streaked like brush strokes. The thin line of the atmosphere shone with a faint halo where it met the black above. He had seen images like this on screens, posters, phone wallpapers. This was different. His chest tightened. "That's home," he said. "For now," Astra said. Time stretched in that upward climb. Seconds felt heavy, like they were being pulled in two directions at once, down toward the familiar, up toward something that had never included him before. When the Veilcraft cleared the last wisps of atmosphere, the sound changed. The low rumble of air over hull fell away, leaving only the steady vibration of the drive and the soft chime of systems checking themselves. Blackness surrounded them. Not empty, not really. Stars pricked the darkness, more than he had ever seen from the ground, each point sharp and cold. He breathed out slowly. For the first time in his life, the sky was no longer above him. It was all around. Neera woke to the sound of a heartbeat that was not hers. For a moment, she did not know where she was. Light filtered through her eyelids, soft and indirect. The air smelled different, cleaner than the lab, without chemicals, but tinged with metals and something faintly sweet. She turned her head. A ceiling curved gently overhead, panels set into its surface. The hum under her body was deep and familiar. A ship. She looked down. Her chest hurt. Under the thin fabric of the medical shift, a shape pulsed faintly, light tracing lines outward. Helion node, returned to its baseline pattern. "Astra," she whispered. "Right here," a voice said. She turned her head the other way. Astra sat on a stool beside the bed, elbows on her knees, fingers laced loosely. The tiredness in her face softened the sharp lines, but her eyes were clear. "You're late," Neera said. "Traffic," Astra said. Neera tried to laugh. It came out as a cough. "Where are we?" she asked. "In orbit," Astra said. "Above the planet you insisted on visiting. We are on the Veilcraft. You are out of Axiom's machines." Neera exhaled. "They got their hands inside Helion," she said. "I could feel them, pushing, pulling. They didn't understand what they were touching." They still don't, Astra said. We closed their fingers before they could break anything that matters. Neera reached up slowly and touched her chest. The skin was tender, but whole. How bad did we hurt them? She asked. Enough to make them angry, Astra said. Not enough to stop them completely. Neera's gaze drifted past her sister. A man sat in the cockpit, visible through the open doorway, strapped into the second chair. He watched the stars, hands resting on his knees, posture caught between tension and awe. That's him, Neera said. Yes, Astra said. The barber, Neera said. Yes, Astra said again. Neera studied her sister's face. You like him, she said. Astra's jaw moved in a way Neera recognized. I respect him, Astra said. That is not what I said, Neera replied. Astra looked down at her hands. He walked into Axiom's lab with no training, no plan, and no guarantee he would walk back out, she said. He did it because he could not stand to see someone dragged into a van in his street. I think that is worth considering. So you do like him, Neera said. Astra's lips twitched. Rest, she said. You will need your strength. We still have choices to make. Neera nodded, eyelids growing heavy again. If he hurt you, she murmured as sleep pulled her down, I will throw him out the airlock. He is not built for airlocks, Astra said softly. He is built for something else. When Neera's breathing settled, Astra stood. She walked to the cockpit. Evan did not look away from the stars as she approached. You heard all that? She asked. I'm just a barber, he said. I hear everything within 3 meters. Occupational hazard. He glanced at her. She seems okay, he said. She will be, Astra said. You hope make sure of that. He shifted in his seat, fingers tracing the edge of the harness. I'm just a barber, he said again. I'm not built for this. She watched his reflection on the curve of the display. You are the reason we are alive, she said. That is more than enough for any design I know. He let out a breath. I keep waiting to feel like I woke up, he said, like this is some brain fever halfway between a double shift and a bad movie. Does it feel like that? She asked. He shook his head. It feels like when I first got in a ring, he said. Everything too bright, too loud, too sharp, and part of my brain saying I should be anywhere else, while another part won't take a step back. Do you regret it? She asked. He thought about that. He pictured his shop, the worn chairs, the mirror with photos tucked into the frame, the little bell over the door, the comforting boredom of routine. He pictured Neera under the machines, Astra in the lab, K7 on the bluff, Draven's calm eyes. No, he said, I don't think I know how to regret something that needed doing. Astra looked at the instrument cluster. The Veilcraft had cleared low orbit. Ahead, a dotted line traced their planned path away from the planet, out toward a point where the gravity wells of Earth and its moon balanced. An ideal place to bend space without tearing too much. We will be in deep space soon, she said, away from their immediate reach. That gives us time. Time for what? He asked. To decide whether to take Helion Node home, destroy it, or offer a controlled version to your people, she said. All of those options change who we are. And who you are, he said. Yes, she agreed. He leaned his head back. Great, he said. I get to help choose the fate of 2 civilizations while still owing rent on a tiny shop back in Greywater Cove. You may not owe it for long, she said, once Axiom finishes rewriting their reports. Your life will not fit back into that room. So they won't just forget me, he said. No, she said, especially not Director Draven. He grimaced. I was afraid you'd say that, he said. Fear is reasonable, she said. Living in it is optional. He turned toward the window again, watching as Earth slowly shrank in the display. He had never felt so small. He had never felt so necessary. On the planet below, Malek Draven did not sleep. His office was 3 levels under a building whose plaques still used the old agency name. Above ground, visitors saw a lobby with flags and security scanners and the usual blur of bureaucratic movement. Down here, the air was cooler, the walls were thicker, the cameras turned a little slower, as if they knew everyone watching them already had clearance. Draven stood in front of a large screen. Footage played in silence. He watched a man in a simple jacket move through the lab, disarming trained operatives with improvised leverage and nerve. He watched him aim for systems instead of skulls. He watched him slice through the plan like a stray variable that refused to cancel. Evan Rook. Draven paused the video. He zoomed in on the man's face. He adapts too fast, Draven said quietly. That makes him dangerous. Holt Kesson stood a respectful distance away, arms behind his back. His ribs had mostly healed. We lost K7 as a usable site, Kesson said. Federal inquiry teams have cordoned it off. We have redirected our equipment to other facilities. But the cost is acceptable, Draven said. Structures can be replaced. Patterns are what matter. He turned away from the screen and faced another display showing a cascade of data, satellite telemetry, power grid anomalies, encrypted communications. In the end, what did we gain from the Vera? He asked. Kesson considered. Partial recordings of Helion node behavior under stress. He said, evidence that its coupling range exceeds our initial estimates. Confirmation that their species is willing to risk direct contact instead of hiding in the dark. And what did we lose? Draven asked. 2 subjects, Kesson said. 1 asset in the field. 1 base. Some drones. And, Draven said, a man we did not know existed yesterday. He tapped the edge of the paused image. Open a new profile, he said. Subject. Evan Rook. Cross-reference all available data. Family, friends, work history, financial patterns, search habits, everything. Yes, Director, Kesson said. In the system, mark him as a low-noise variable with high potential impact. Draven said. Target priority for future operations. Capture alive. I want to understand how someone like him emerges from a place like Greywater Cove. And if we cannot capture him? Kesson asked. Draven looked at the star map pinned in the corner of the room. It showed not constellations, but vectors, known and suspected paths of craft that had never filed flight plans with any human agency. Then we learned to live with the idea, Draven said, that the first man to walk willingly into our shadows now walks in theirs too. He turned back to the data. Either way, he said, the experiment continues. The Veilcraft slid into deep space as quietly as it had left the planet. Behind them, Earth and its moon fell into a single frame. A bright sphere and a smaller companion, hanging in the black. Ahead, the stars thickened. Dust clouds glowed in bands and knots, reflecting light from suns too distant to see individually. Patches of darkness cut through them, places where light could not reach. Or did not escape. In the cockpit, the instruments reported they were clear of the local traffic shells. No more satellites, no more debris clouds, no more man-made noise. We are at the edge of your reach, Astra said. And the start of yours, Evan said. She adjusted a control. A wireframe diagram of the Veilcraft appeared. Surrounded by shifting fields, a curve traced their intended jump, arching away from the solar system's mass toward a calculated coordinate in interstellar space. This ship cannot cross the full distance to Vara's Lin, she said. Its drive can fold space locally, creating a small corridor between gravity wells. We will jump to a relay point, then wait to be picked up. A cosmic bus stop, he said. Yes, she said, with fewer benches. He unbuckled his harness and stood. I need to see this without glass between us, he said. There is still glass, she said, or its equivalent, but I understand. She engaged the autopilot and followed him to the observation alcove just behind the cockpit. A section of the hull there was a transparent composite, thick and layered. From the outside, it would still look like matte gray metal. From the inside, it was a window into the dark. Evan stepped close. The stars here looked different than they did in the cockpit display. Sharper, less filtered, the depth between them seemed endless. He put his hand against the pane. Time felt strange. The last day had been filled so completely that an hour ago felt like another life. And yesterday was something that belonged to a man who had never left the ground. When this ends, Astra said behind him, where will you go? He watched the faint glow of a distant nebula, a smear of pale color against the black. Back to the shop? He said. Pretend I only took a long lunch while the world rearranged itself? It is an option, she said. He shook his head. I think that option burned with the lab, he said, and with K7, and with the first time I saw a drone drop from a ceiling to cage someone because they had the wrong biology. She moved a little closer. There are other places, she said. We could take you to Varazlin. You could disappear into a city where no one knows what scissors are. You could learn to cut hair in lower gravity. He smiled at the glass. Tempting, he said, but it feels wrong to leave without caring what happens next down there. Draven isn't going to stop because you're gone. My people aren't going to suddenly get wiser just because they almost blew a hole in their own laws. You want to fight him, she said. I want to make sure he doesn't get to speak for all of us. Evan said, if Helion Node is going to be part of our story, I don't want it written only in shadows. He turned then. She was close enough that he could see the fine lines at the corners of her eyes. The tiny tension there that she tried to hide. Anywhere you're going, he said quietly, that's where I'll go. I don't know enough yet to pick a path, but I know I don't want to pick it without you in the room. Silence settled between them. He was suddenly very aware of the sound of the ship, the steady thrum underfoot, the faint whisper of air through vents. Astra studied his face. You attach yourself easily, she said, to people in chairs, to strangers in alleys, to women from unlisted stars. It's a flaw, he said, but it keeps getting me into the right kinds of trouble. She lifted her hand. For a second, he thought she might touch his cheek, or his chest, or some other place that would make the moment explicit. Instead, she took his hand. Her fingers were warm, strong, there was no tremor in them. On Varazlin, she said, we have a saying, shared danger builds shared direction. It does not guarantee what comes after. But it means you do not have to walk alone into whatever that is. I'll take that, he said, even if I can't pronounce it. She squeezed his hand. They stood like that for a while, watching the slow shift of the stars as the Veilcraft aligned itself. In the cockpit, a soft tone sounded. Drive ready, the ship announced in a neutral voice. Metric manifold within safe thresholds. Astra did not let go. We are about to step into something your species has not experienced directly, she said, a controlled distortion of spacetime. We will not move faster than light. We will ask light to take the long way around us. Will it hurt? He asked. No, she said, but your inner ear may complain. My inner ear has been complaining since the warehouse, he said. She smiled, small, but real. Then it will have company, she said. They returned to the cockpit still holding hands, only separating long enough to strap in. The stars outside shifted as the ship rolled into alignment with its intended fold. Ready? She asked. No, he said, do it anyway. She touched the control. The view outside did not blur or streak the way stories said it should. Instead, it seemed to stretch, as if someone had taken the fabric of the universe and pulled gently at its edges. Points of light bent. Distances warped. For a brief moment, Evan felt as though his body had been scaled to fit a different diagram, larger in some directions, smaller in others. Then the sensation passed. The stars settled in new positions. The screens confirmed it. They were no longer in the Earth-Moon system. The sun had shrunk to a bright point behind them. Ahead, a faint beacon pulsed, a relay station, waiting in the dark. Evan let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. The stars didn't feel distant anymore, he thought. They felt like places. Like choices. Like roads that had always been there, waiting for someone foolish enough, or brave enough, to step off the familiar map and see where they really led. And as the Veilcraft drifted toward the relay beacon, Evan realized something simple and impossible at the same time. This wasn't the end of his story. It was the first line of a new one. He wasn't just the barber who tried to do the right thing. He was the man who stepped off the map, who chose the stars, and who refused to let fear decide the future for anyone. And somewhere behind him, Earth kept spinning, unaware that one ordinary life had just changed the trajectory of two civilizations. If this journey moved you, hit like, share the story with someone who loves sci-fi, and subscribe for more chapters from the edge of the unknown.